This young man is the main character. Who knows what his name is? One fateful day, his entire world came to an end. His entire family was massacred. A horde of monsters slaughtered them all. He wished he could have just died along with them. But tragically, his fate as the main character made him practically immortal. A monster ripped his head clean off his neck, but after it rolled a few times, he simply came back to life. Just as the monsters were about to leave, the main character, fueled by a desperate need for revenge, leaped out to ambush them. But what chance did he stand? One monster seized him by the neck and promptly tore off his arm. It tossed him to the ground like a piece of trash. The main character screamed in agony, but just a few seconds later, his severed limb underwent a miraculous regeneration, forming a brand new arm. The monster exclaimed in delight, "Just like a lizard's tail!" They all cackled, deciding to keep him. With him as their captive, they'd have an endless supply of food for a lifetime. They nicknamed the main character Lizard Tail and dragged him back to their monster den. The power of regeneration, once a gift from the heavens, had become his personal curse. Several years later, Lizard Tail had grown up, yet he remained as pitiful as ever. He was kept chained like an animal inside a cave by two monsters. Whenever they got hungry, they would simply tear off his limbs for a meal. Although his incredible regeneration would instantly restore what was lost, the agonizing pain he felt never faded. As if that wasn't enough, one monster decided to play another cruel game. The other monster, all too familiar with this routine, warned his companion to stop the foolishness. "His hair is Lizard Tail's weak point," he cautioned. "If he dies, there's nothing left to eat." The first monster just laughed, refusing to stop. He unfastened the chains, setting the main character free. He got to his feet, rotating his arms to relieve the stiffness. The monster taunted him, telling him to hurry up and attack. It hurled every insult imaginable, provoking him until he finally snapped and charged. The monster skillfully ripped off his arm, cackling with delight. It found that a meal earned this way was far more entertaining and delicious. The main character desperately tried to evade and counterattack, but he was utterly powerless against the beast. In a desperate gambit, he managed to slightly injure the monster by shoving his entire arm down its throat. The monster choked, then furiously grabbed his face. Knowing full well this monster wouldn't dare kill its endless food source, the main character provoked it without restraint. The monster, who appeared to be the leader, ordered the other one to stop its insolence. He stood and made an offer: if it released the boy, he would lead it to a village he had been saving for a special occasion. The other monster, overjoyed by the offer, immediately slammed the main character onto the ground. With a new prize in sight, it couldn't be bothered with him anymore. The main character lay on the ground in a heap, utterly exhausted. They wouldn't kill him and he couldn't die. Chained by three monsters, he was dragged along like an animal. They even forced the chain into his mouth like a bit. His jaw bled profusely, leaving a trail of blood along their path. Unbeknownst to them, someone was following that very trail, a monster hunter. As the main character was dragged along by the monster horde, he screamed continuously, hoping to warn anyone nearby to run for their lives. The monsters jeered at his pointless efforts. "Scream your lungs out," they mocked, as if any villagers could possibly hear you. At that very moment, the man who had been following the blood trail finally caught up. Thanks to the boy's screams, he had located them. After losing the bloody path partway through, the main character desperately yelled at him, "If you heard me, then run. What are you doing here?" "They're monsters." Seeing the boy's wretched condition, the man gritted his teeth. This hunter simply replied, "Leave them to me." Ignoring the cackling monsters, he pulled out a small rattle and shook it, producing a rhythmic chiming sound. An aura enveloped him as a monster was obliterated and his entire presence shifted. He introduced himself as Chong-gu, a monster hunter. Another monster charged forward to attack him. He effortlessly blocked its attack with a single hand. The rattle in his hand transformed into a sword, and with one swing, Chu sliced the monster in two. Realizing Chu was on a completely different level, the monster leader begged for mercy. However, Chu ignored its pleas and cut it down with his sword. After slaying every monster, Chu freed the main character. The boy sat stunned for a moment, lost in thought, before excitedly getting to his feet and telling Chu he wanted to slay monsters too. He begged him to teach him how to defeat a monster. Chu patted his shoulder, reminding him that he was a monster hunter. If he wanted to join Chu, said he could take him on as an apprentice. Chu then walked over to the monster he had just defeated. He prodded it with his sword and realized it was still alive. He raised his sword to finish the monster off, but was taken aback by the main character's sudden action. He picked up a rock and crushed his own hand. He wanted to show the hunter his power of regeneration. The main character confessed everything to Chu. For the past year, this immortal-like ability had prevented him from logging out. He had been eaten by a monster time and time again. He looked at Chu with serious eyes, saying he didn't want to be an apprentice, he just wanted to get his revenge and slaughter every last one of those monsters. The main character fell to his knees and begged Chong-gu, "Please teach me how to kill those monsters." Chu gripped his sword tightly. He couldn't believe the main character had endured such horrifying experiences. Sheathing his sword, he asked the boy for his name. The main character cheerfully replied that he was Lizard Tail. After answering, he was shocked to realize it was the name the monsters had given him. Why did he blurt out that name? The main character gritted his teeth. He decided to embrace the name so he would never forget what those monsters did to him. The main character declared loudly and clearly that he was Lizard Tail. Chu agreed to teach him but warned that the training would be excruciating. To demonstrate, he approached the earlier monster, hoisted it up by its neck, and started explaining. When a monster perishes, its ring disappears. This one still has its ring, which means it's still alive. He said he would help the boy kill this one. When the monster leader regained consciousness, it found itself bound in iron chains to a boulder. It was severely wounded and coughed weakly. The monster had no idea why it was chained up. If it wanted to, it could easily break free. Chu, sitting on the monster's head, plunged his sword into its shoulder. He told the monster to behave itself. Even if the chains couldn't hold it, he could still hear its every move. If the chains broke, he would send it to the afterlife instantly. The monster was furious but dared not make a move. Chu then began to instruct the main character. He taught him how to obtain holy power. The main character listened with intense focus. Every human is connected to holy power. If you immerse your body in it, you'll be able to see that holy power. Once you can see it, you can use it. The main character nodded eagerly, though it was doubtful he understood a thing. Chu explained that the first step to obtaining holy power is to awaken the sixth sense, but acquiring it takes time. Normally, it could take years or even a decade to awaken it, but Chu knew the main character was burning for revenge, so he offered to help him open it now. However, this method was said to be unbelievably painful. The main character beat his chest, guaranteeing he could handle it all. Chu placed one hand on his head. Shaking the rattle in his other hand, a dark aura enveloped the main character. Chu announced that this was the sixth sense, the sense of holy power. He asked the boy how it felt. The main character replied that it was nothing special and didn't hurt much. Chu then put the rattle away. At first, you have to slowly build trust with the divine to possess this power. If you try to force the sacred energy, the divine will reject you immediately, Lizard Tail shouted. Then isn't this all pointless? Chong-gu clapped his hands together, explaining that even if possession is rejected, you can still force it inside for an incomplete bond. However, an incomplete possession only grants you half the sacred energy. You won't be able to properly wield it, but you can use that half to skewer any monster. Chu told the main character to close his eyes and focus on his sixth sense. Lizard Tail obeyed, closing his eyes to feel for it, but something suddenly jolted him, forcing his eyes open. He collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. Chu approached and asked if he could still take it. Now you have to force it. Don't let the power escape after you've summoned it. The main character took a deep breath and tried again. His eyes turned pitch black as he gritted his teeth, struggling to contain the sacred energy. Lizard Tail clenched every muscle in his core to prevent the sacred energy from escaping. Chu confirmed he was doing it right. All that was left was to endure the pain. Lizard Tail dug his heels in, then charged toward the monster chained to a boulder. He declared that he had to skewer it. The main character launched an attack at the monster, which broke its chains to dodge the blow. Chu told him that if he could defeat the monster, it was his to keep. The monster looked on bewildered. It couldn't believe Lizard Tail had powered up so fast. It didn't know what Chong-gu had done to him, but it refused to be defeated by this kid. Lizard Tail looked like he was on a high. The pain was excruciating, but the rush was insane. He laughed maniacally as he charged the monster, a true hunter seeking revenge. The monster slashed at his leg, forcing Lizard Tail to a knee. It moved to put a hole through his head, but it was in for a surprise. He had been faking it the whole time. The main character counterattacked, smashing his fist into the monster's face and sending it flying. The monster coughed violently, heavily wounded. Lizard Tail, however, looked completely unhinged. He charged forward, muttering about how he would skewer the monster. Watching from the sidelines, Chu thought this red-headed brat was terrifyingly impressive. He could move that fast even while in agony. The kid had more talent than him. Chu realized Lizard Tail had a greater affinity for sacred energy than anyone. Meanwhile, the battle raged on. No matter how many times the monster stabbed him, the main character's rapid regeneration made him seem almost immortal. He just kept charging forward, full of vigor. The monster switched tactics, pulling spikes from its back and fashioning them into a sword. Seeing the monster's new weapon, the main character just laughed hysterically and decided to copy it. He tore off his own arm, using the bone as his weapon. The monster, infuriated by his mocking expression, charged with its sword. The main character blocked with his severed arm and the monster found it couldn't cut through the bone. Even Chu was stunned by this move. Because the arm was infused with sacred arts, the monster stood no chance of cutting through it. The main character roared out his name Doma. He used his other arm to swat the monster away before grabbing one of its limbs. Doma then used his bone weapon to sever the monster's arm. The monster shrieked in agony, swinging its sword with its remaining hand to keep him at a distance. The monster quickly re-strategized. It had to aim for Lizard Tail's head now. It tightened its grip on the sword and charged forward to attack. However, with a single wave of his hand, the main character shattered the monster's sword. The monster fell into a state of panic. It dropped the remains of its weapon and tried to flee for its life. It felt the same terror it had when facing Chu, but unlike before, it realized its final day had come and turned to flee without looking back. The protagonist rushed in from behind, grabbing its arm and knocking its head clean off. The monster uttered a final curse before it vanished. Doma picked up the monster's head. He mirrored the very act the creature had once done to him. He named this moment the start of his revenge and then tossed its head to the ground like a piece of garbage. Doma felt a grim satisfaction. He silently informed his parents in the heavens that it had all begun. He would exact his revenge by slaughtering every last monster. Chu told him it was time to go, saying he would take him near a village. The two of them headed towards the settlement. Doma asked Changgu what would happen if it took a long time to acquire sacred power. Chu looked at him and replied that his thirst for revenge would shorten that time considerably. Of course, he didn't expect him to succeed immediately. As the two were walking and talking, a loud explosion suddenly erupted behind them. They immediately rushed towards the sound. Villagers were scattering in terror as a horde of monsters descended to one monster, acting as if it were immortal, opened its cavernous maw. Just as it was about to lunge at a young boy, the protagonist arrived just in time to intervene. He leaped forward and struck the monster with brutal force. Caught off guard, it tumbled to the ground without any chance of defense. The other monsters were shocked to find a monster hunter here. One of them, terrified, cowardly, turned to flee. However, it only took a few steps before running straight into Changgu. He was furious because there were supposed to be guards on duty, but the post was completely empty. The remaining monsters charged at Changgu, thinking they could end it all by taking down both humans. But this game wasn't going to be that easy. With a single swing of his sword, Chu obliterated two of the monsters, leaving no chance for regeneration. He swung again at the rest. One died instantly while another shrieked and tried to flee. The fleeing monster was met with a single punch from Doma that sent its head flying. Having saved the villagers, the two were met with heartfelt cheers of gratitude. Amidst the celebrating crowd, Doma noticed an orphaned child. He felt a surge of frustration, believing he had arrived too late. Chu patted his head reassuringly, telling him to focus on those he saved and to leave the dead to him. A man identifying himself as the village chief stepped forward to thank the pair on behalf of all the villagers. He told them that if they needed anything, he would provide it. Changgu pushed Doma toward the chief, stating that the boy needed food and new clothes. The village chief enthusiastically called for the villagers to prepare a meal. Doma was immediately whisked away by a crowd of grateful people. Chu turned back, his expression grim, and walked toward the three guards who had just returned from slacking off. Seeing his furious face, they grew fearful. The one in the middle knew his place and was quick to apologize. The one beside him, however, was still a greenhorn. He tried to argue back, saying they only left because no monster had appeared for a long time. Chu glared at them and asked what would have happened if he hadn't been there. The number of casualties would have been much higher. After a harsh scolding, the three of them became much more submissive, not daring to utter another word. Chu turned away. He told them to go and bow their heads in apology to the victims. That evening, as Changgu stood watch from a tree, Doma approached him. He had been given new clothes, a bath, and a proper haircut. Chu complimented him, saying he looked quite sharp. The protagonist rubbed his head shyly and bowed to thank Chu. He declared that he now had a purpose. He vowed to wipe out every single monster, as if they had never existed. Doma stared into the distance. He had now decided to become a hunter. He knelt before Chu and begged him to accept him as his disciple. He wanted to see the path that lay ahead. Chu walked past him and Doma thought he had been rejected, but to his surprise, he had been accepted as his disciple. A delighted Doma ran to catch up. The two of them then departed from the village. The boy Doma had saved came to see the two of them off. He shouted after them, vowing that one day he too would save people just like they did. The two set off on their journey. Changgu said that before the real training began, he would teach him a little more about being a monster hunter. A monster hunter is someone who protects humanity by taking down any monster that poses a threat. There are two main categories of hunter which seem similar on the surface but are fundamentally different. The first is the Guardian Corps. They focus solely on protecting human territory, eliminating any monster that dares to trespass. The second category is the elite squad. They venture out from human lands to actively hunt down any monster they can find. Chu asked Doma which squad he wanted to join. Without hesitation, he replied, "The elite squad." Chu then announced that the training would now commence. The first exercise was running. Doma was dumbfounded when he heard this. Seeing his reaction, Chu burst out laughing. Running is the most fundamental aspect of movement, and you'll be running while using your powers, so you need to learn how to maintain your stamina. Doma let out a sound of understanding as it finally clicked. He eagerly started to run with Chu running alongside him. The two ran from dusk till dawn, leaving Doma completely exhausted. He was panting heavily, looking like he was on the verge of collapse. Meanwhile, Chu, who was right beside him, hadn't even broken a single sweat. When Doma begged for a break, Chu retorted, "Didn't you just take one?" Doma argued back, "That was just slowing down. When did I get a break?" Chu decided to give him a break of sorts. He told Doma to take down the horde of monsters in front of them. Doma was thrilled with this change in training. Tearing off one of his own arms to use as a weapon, a testament to his incredible regeneration, he eagerly charged toward the monster horde. Seeing a human approach, the creatures thought a meal had. They surged forward as well. Doma used the severed arm to bludgeon them one by one, completely wiping out the first wave that rushed him. Another monster tried to attack him from behind, but he sent its head flying with a single punch. From the sidelines, Chu shouted to Doma, "Try to practice dodging their attacks before you finish them." He demonstrated by effortlessly evading a blow, then urged Doma to try. Doma copied him, sidestepping a monster's attack before punching its head clean off. Another group charged and Doma leaped into the air to evade. Seizing the opening, a cunning monster latched onto his arm with its teeth. Startled and annoyed, the protagonist grabbed it by the neck and slammed it into the ground as another wave of creatures swarmed toward him. Doma gritted his teeth and swore, channeling a massive amount of energy into the arm he was wielding before sweeping through the horde. Yet as soon as one wave fell, another surged forward, only to meet the same fate as the last. He taunted the remaining creatures, which, blinded by rage, charged at him mindlessly. In the end, a short while later, Doma was resting amidst the bodies of the entire monster horde he had just defeated. Chu said, "That's enough of a break. Get up, it's time to keep moving." He then mentioned it was time to eat, but they'd have to reach the next village for food, and so Doma had to start running again. The two of them ran from one village to the next. Every time they encountered a monster, he would cut it down before continuing on his run. He ran and ran endlessly for several days, then many more for what felt like several weeks. He had been running for so long that he had lost all track of time. He was on the verge of collapsing before he could even reach the next village. The two of them finally stopped in a small town. This town was quite large. Gu told him they would eat on the move. He pointed to the sky where a massive dragon-headed ship was descending toward them. The protagonist stared with wide eyes. Chu clapped him on the shoulder and said that if he wanted to eat delicious food and get a good night's sleep, the hunter base was the place to be. Doma eagerly agreed. Doma and Changgu boarded the ship and continued their journey. The vessel came to a stop in the heart of the city. The two of them disembarked. Doma, bewildered, asked Chu why they were here. Weren't they supposed to be going to the hunter base? Chu explained that the new headquarters was located in the city center. He pointed to a colossal, seemingly immortal tree and said, "That's our base right there." Doma's jaw dropped in shock, like a country boy seeing the big city for the first time. He asked what it would take to become a trainee hunter. Chu assured him not to worry, as he would personally vouch for him. However, he warned Doma to take it seriously. As his sponsor, Doma would be under intense scrutiny. Doma was taken inside to register. Thanks to Changgu's recommendation, he was placed directly into the advanced bracket. The receptionist asked where his hunter gear was. Doma bluntly replied that he'd deal with it later. The receptionist was barely holding back his anger. If Chu hadn't brought the kid in, he would have never tolerated such an attitude. As Doma handled his registration, Chu waited outside. While reading a paper, an old acquaintance, Battalion Commander Yan, came over to greet him. The two men greeted each other warmly, heartily, slapping each other on the shoulder. Doma, having just finished his paperwork, scowled upon seeing some old man patting his master's shoulder. Chu yanked Doma's head down into a bow, introducing him to Isan as his disciple. Isan roared with laughter at Doma's sheer insolence. Isan's two disciples couldn't stand it and started taunting the boy. They threatened to shave his head if he acted up again. Not one to back down, Doma glared back fiercely. Chu clapped him on the shoulder, telling him to be polite. But Doma was all guts and no brains. He immediately challenged them to a fight to prove who was stronger, and the two sides glared at each other, sparks flying. The two masters just chuckled from the sidelines. Wai-san proposed a bet to Changgu, a showdown to see whose student was the superior hunter. Chu agreed. Wai-san turned to the receptionist and told him to arrange a cleanup mission. The group then headed to the station. Their transport was already waiting. An attendant handed Chu a map, and he turned to call his 3 apprentices who were still locked in a staring contest to get on board. The vehicle tore across the desert at high speed. Doma, meanwhile, was fast asleep with his mouth hanging open. Isan's disciple Gon propped his leg on the side of the vehicle and started taunting Doma. This time Doma was smarter, ignoring the provocation with a contemptuous smirk. Mistaking the smirk as a personal insult, Gon furiously tried to lunge at Doma, but Dongshuk held him back. Just then, Chu drew his sword and declared the mission had begun. All 3 apprentices immediately adopted combat stances. Doma shot forward with incredible speed, but Wai-san's 2 disciples were not to be outdone. They unleashed their own powers and charged right after him. The 3 gave Chu a quick farewell before leaping into the fray. Dongshuk placed a hand on his chest, yelled, "Heart explode!" and began to transform. Flames erupted around Dongshuk, even his eyebrows catching fire as he accelerated and blasted ahead of the others. He swept his flaming hand towards the monster horde, incinerating a huge swath of land. Gon charged furiously right behind him. He tapped his staff against his stomach and transformed as well, his body becoming wreathed in lightning. Gaon then surged forward, slamming his own staff into the ground. The impact shattered the earth. Gon glanced back, smirking smugly at Doma. In response, Doma simply ripped off a nearby monster's arm and began using it as a club. Isan's 2 disciples could only stare in disbelief. After a short while, the 3 of them had completely annihilated the monster horde. Doma was still relentlessly bashing the head of an already dead monster with its own severed arm. Gion asked what kind of training Changgu put him through. Doma just replied, "Running." As they were talking, a monster launched a surprise attack from behind, impaling Doma straight through the chest. He couldn't react in time. Doma let out a weak cough. The monster, seemingly disgusted, tossed him aside. Doma's face twisted with rage as his regeneration began to knit the wound, a prelude to his revenge. Gon gave him a thumbs up, impressed. Dongshuk, however, was not as optimistic. He knew that if it had been anyone but the seemingly immortal Doma, they would have died instantly. The lead monster roared in fury that these humans had wiped out its pack. Doma arrogantly charged forward, taunting it. "Yeah, it was me. What are you gonna do about it?" After just a few trash-talking words, the monster impaled Doma through the stomach and sent him flying once more. Next, it was Gion and Dongsuk's turn to charge forward. Dongsuk summoned a massive flame to engulf the monster, but the fire had absolutely no effect on it. Ju, watching from the boat, wasn't particularly concerned. Finally, a worthy opponent had appeared. Doma stood up, stripped off his tattered shirt, and tore off one of his arms to use as a weapon, charging forward with his amazing regeneration. Gion and Dongsuk attacked from the sides, but the monster easily blocked them. Doma attacked from above, bringing the severed arm down on the nape of its neck. The monster was startled and spun around, throwing a punch right at Doma's face. Luckily, Dongsuk struck the monster's arm, deflecting the blow. Doma only had one of his arms torn off. Jian seized the opportunity, thrusting his thunderstaff into the monster's abdomen. The creature coughed up blood and was sent flying back. Doma stood frozen, completely stiff. If Dongsuk hadn't blocked that attack, his head would have been sent flying. Gion turned and called out to him, snapping him back to reality. Across the way, the monster was far from defeated. It rose from the rubble, seemingly immortal. Now it was going to use its full power. The monster took its staff and dipped it into the halo above its head. The staff transformed into a massive axe. The monster swung it, launching a wave of energy toward the 3 of them, who quickly ducked to evade the attack. The ground behind them was obliterated by the force of the axe's slash. Dongsuk turned to Gion, saying that to fight an awakened monster like this, they needed to increase their power. The 2 understood each other and prepared to do it. Gion activated Control Level 3, and electricity crackled around him as 2 ears sprouted from his head. Previously, Jonggu had explained to Doma that control levels ranged from 1 to 10. Level 1 meant being able to visualize divine power, while level 10 represented a complete incarnation of that power. Right now, Doma couldn't even manage to reach level 1. In terms of raw strength, he was certainly beyond it, but a hunter must follow the path of divine power. He could only fight a powerful monster by using divine power. This meant that if he encountered an awakened monster, he wouldn't stand a chance. Doma, seething with frustration, stomped his feet on the ground. He slapped himself a few times to calm down and took a deep breath, trying to feel the breath of the sacred flame. On the other side, Gion and Dongsuk were joining forces to fight the monster. Dongsuk's flames were useless. Gion struck at the beast with his staff, but it easily parried the blow. Even though Gion had gotten a little stronger, the monster still looked down on him with utter contempt. It swung its axe once, sending Gion flying. He was slashed in the process and suffered a serious injury. Dongsuk quickly ran to support him and check on his condition. Dongsuk's flames were completely ineffective against this monster, and the power from its halo was immense. Right now they were completely outmatched. Dong-seok said he would block the creature's vision while Gion aimed for its back. As Gion charged forward, Dong-seok timed it perfectly and clapped his hands, causing the monster's eyes to burst. Its vision was temporarily lost. Gion quickly got behind it and struck with his staff. The monster coughed up a little blood, gritting its teeth and cursing. "Damn it, you're ganging up on me!" Gion smirked contemptuously. "Catch me if you can." But the monster didn't bother chasing Gion. Instead, it charged straight for Dong-seok. He calmly clapped his hands once more, and the monster's vision vanished again. It was unbearably furious. "Have you all gone insane from being destined as monster food?" Gion slung his staff over his shoulder and sneered. "It's more like you monsters fled here because you fear the human monster hunter." The monster roared, "Afraid my ass!" Just as both sides were about to clash again, a plume of black smoke suddenly rose in the distance. The source of the smoke was Doma, who was powering up, gathering strength for his revenge. Previously, Jong-gu had taught him how to take down an awakened monster. Divine power is vast, but everyone has a limit, so no single person can possess an infinite amount of it. With that limit, a lack of awareness can block the flow of divine power. Ju had taught him how to use his full strength to shatter that limit and access even more divine power. Doma followed the instructions, using his leg as an anchor to channel holy energy through his entire body. The next step was to control and accelerate the flow. Doma screamed as blood gushed from his nose, momentarily losing his footing and stopping the flow. With such a rapid flow, the backlash was unavoidable. Doma's blood splattered everywhere. He looked like he was about to go Super Saiyan. Only because Doma possessed incredible regeneration and immense mental fortitude could he attempt this stunt. If he weren't the main character, he'd be dead by now. Isan's two disciples and the monster temporarily stopped fighting to watch Doma's transformation. The monster recalled crushing the boy's shoulder, but quickly realized he was practically immortal. The creature immediately changed its target and charged toward Doma. He charged forward as well, and the two clashed violently. Knowing Doma's power wouldn't last long, Gon and Jong-seok also rushed in to support him. Chu was still watching from the ship, but fearing he'd miss the full HD action, he moved closer for a better view. The monster swung its axe into him, and he cried out in pain before landing a punch that deformed the creature's face. The monster coughed up blood and gritted its teeth. It swung its axe at him again, but this time Doma ducked to avoid it. The monster then brought the axe down from above, but this time he managed to block it. Dong-seok dove down from above, slamming the ground with his eternal flames. The earth cracked, causing the monster to lose its balance. Doma rushed in from the side and punched the monster in the face, sending it flying again. The creature coughed violently, spitting up more blood. Doma was exhausted from maintaining his power. He panted heavily. Gaon asked if he was about to collapse, but Doma declared he wouldn't fall until he got his revenge on this monster. Dong-seok turned back and told Doma to hold off the monster. While the skilled hunter prepared a formation, Doma and Gaon advanced. Behind them, Dong-seok began to summon his flames. Doma and Gaon bickered, neither willing to back down. The monster rose from the rubble. It tossed its axe aside, deciding to use its trump card. The monster touched both of its hands to the ring on its head. A mass of black fluid enveloped its arms. The monster gritted its teeth in pain. It shot forward, appearing instantly in front of Gaon. Luckily, he was agile enough to lean back and dodge. He looked at the monster's arms and quickly realized it was absorbing the demon ring into its body. Doma swung his leg to kick the monster. However, it caught his leg and threw him away. The monster leaped after Doma. It punched downward, slamming him violently into the ground. The monster grabbed him by the throat and raised a hand to chop off his head. Just in time, Gaon rushed in and jabbed the creature in the back with his staff, sending it flying. Gaon turned back and told Doma to get up, but couldn't see him anywhere. The monster dug its feet into the ground to stop its momentum. While it was distracted, Doma dove from above and punched the monster. It face-planted straight into the ground. Doma rained down a barrage of punches on the creature. It endured the pain, gritting its teeth, then swung its hand up to grab Doma's face. It retaliated with a punch to his stomach. Doma also reached out and tore at the monster's neck. It screamed in agony, forced to release its grip on his face. Doma coughed violently. The monster clutched the spot where Doma had torn at it. As it was cursing, a bolt of lightning struck its arm. Immediately, a volley of other bolts pierced its body. The monster screamed. It had been restrained by Gaon, unable to move. Gaon turned and shouted, "Doma, hurry up, I can't hold it for much longer. Stop messing around and finish it in one blow." While Doma stood there stunned, Dong-seok scrambled over. Half of his body was enveloped in flames as he yelled that he still needed a little more time. The monster, seeing its fate was sealed, desperately tried to call a truce. Dong-seok approached the monster. He raised his hand, aimed it directly at the creature, and unleashed a fireball. The orb passed through, penetrating deep inside the monster. The monster was incinerated from within, vaporizing in an instant and leaving behind nothing but a pile of dried skin. Jia-on breathed a sigh of relief and collapsed to the ground. Doma asked if he was certain they had finished off the monster for good. Jia-on had barely sat down before he had to jump back up staff in hand to stop Dongshuk from being crushed by the holy power. Dongshuk lay on the ground, his mouth wide open, as the flames raged on without stopping. Jia-on cursed, "Damn it all, it's too late. We have to get the bracelet off Dongshuk's right wrist and fast." Doma said he would do it, but just then someone rushed over. He told them to get back and let him handle it. He waved his hand, then placed it on Shuk's face. Chu chanted some kind of incantation, and after a moment, Shuk returned to normal. He sat up with a start. Dongshuk hurriedly bowed his head, thanking Jonggu for saving his life. Jonggu put his staff away and clapped Dongshuk heartily on the shoulder, telling him not to worry. But in reality, Jonggu's hand was badly burned, though it was already showing faint signs of regeneration. The three of them had finally completed their first mission. While the others gradually headed for the vehicle, Doma remained standing before the corpse of the defeated monster, muttering to himself. He considered naming the monster "I'm sorry," but unfortunately it had already kicked the bucket. This time only two of Yan's disciples were leaving. Chu told them to let Yan know that he and Doma would be heading north. Jia-on and Dongshuk waved goodbye to Jonggu and departed, vowing to be stronger the next time they met. The vehicle sped across the desert. Jia-on told Dongshuk to be more careful with controlling his holy power next time, or else that lizard tail guy would steal the spotlight. As night fell, Jonggu and Doma stopped to rest at a nearby hunter shelter. It resembled a watchtower but was actually a pre-stocked safe house and was quite well equipped. There were even spare clothes. Jonggu told Doma to get changed, wash up, and go to bed. Seeing Doma still standing there, Jonggu asked, "You don't like it?" He said it wasn't that. He was just thinking about how his body had grown stronger, but he wanted to push even further to a level that felt almost immortal. Jonggu asked him just how strong he wanted to become. Doma replied that he honestly didn't know, but he could no longer rip off his own arm to use as a weapon like before. Today, during the fight with the monster, the arm he tore off exploded instantly. It couldn't withstand the power that had surpassed its own limits. His amazing regeneration was useless if the parts couldn't handle the strain. Doma grumbled, clutching the bone. "If I keep fighting with a weapon this fragile, how will I ever get my revenge?" Jonggu touched the staff hanging at his hip and asked Doma, "Think this would work?" A hunter like him often needs a weapon capable of withstanding immense power. Doma apologized glumly, saying he just preferred to fight using his own bones. Jonggu advised, "Then just focus on that one thing." He sat in one spot, lost in thought about what to do now. Jonggu hung his shirt on a hook and got into bed. He told Doma to stop overthinking and get some sleep to recover his strength. Doma lay down on the bed, but he couldn't fall asleep. His mind was still racing, as he currently had no interest in anything else. Suddenly, a new idea struck him. "I'll channel a flow of power into the ground and then draw it up through my whole body, then I can try transferring it into my arm." Doma sat bolt upright, intending to try it right away. But then he remembered that his arm would probably explode before he could even rip it off. Doma convinced himself to listen to his mentor, go to sleep, and try again tomorrow. But then another idea struck him and his two eyes flew wide open. What if I concentrate the power directly into the bone? Maybe the bone itself could handle the strain and wouldn't explode if he only channeled the energy into it. Doma shot up in bed again. He glanced over at Jonggu, who was asleep in the other bed, and then lay back down. "You need to listen to your master and get some sleep." Not even 3 seconds later, Doma sneaks out to experiment. Who could possibly sleep at a time like this? Doma tries to summon his sacred energy, channeling the flow of power into the bones of his arm. However, the energy stubbornly flows through his flesh instead of his bones. Frustrated, Doma curses, demanding the power channel correctly. Suddenly, his arm begins to deform from the inside. It swells grotesquely and shows signs of spreading. Doma quickly severs the limb himself. He breathes a sigh of relief. He almost had to live with an arm like that for the rest of his life. He realizes that if he doesn't focus on the flow, his arm swells the moment he tries to halt the power surge with his regeneration. Doma decides to try again. Suddenly, he notices the arm he just cut off. Doma shouts with joy. The severed arm didn't explode. He succeeded. He could feel the power resonating from the arm. Doma slaps himself awake and begins experimenting again to perfect the technique. In the blink of an eye, it was morning. The first rays of sunlight shine into the room. Chu wakes up to find Doma gone. He figures the boy was just too eager and woke up early. Chu opens the door and finds a bloody mess outside with Doma fast asleep with his mouth wide open. A bird flies by, dropping a small pouch next to Doma. Seeing him asleep, it opens its beak and bites him on the cheek. When Doma doesn't react, it pecks his face repeatedly. Doma wakes up dazed. The bird senses the sacred energy emanating from his body and flies away in terror. Doma looks at the package beside him, wondering what it is. Chu tells him it's his new uniform. He threw away Doma's old shirt because it was too tattered. Doma looks at the bag and asks if they have to pay for it. Chu confirms that they do, and if he needs anything, he can request it from the Monster Hunter Corps. Doma opens the package and holds up a gem asking what it is. Chu explains it's a request gem. He just needs to write down his request and channel his sacred energy into it. You can ask for anything you need, like backup for instance. If you have it, I can also track your location. Doma is impressed. The hunter army has so many interesting things. Chu reminds him to make his bed properly when he wakes up. The guard post is used by many people, so don't leave it dirty. He tells him to grab a broom and clean up the mess he made last night. While Doma is cleaning, strangers arrive at the guard post. A man and a woman are arguing back and forth about fighting some monster. The man named Tesu walking behind them seems all too used to this. He lets out a bored yawn. He greets Chu enthusiastically when he sees him. After Doma finishes cleaning and comes inside, Chu introduces him to Tesu. Tesu cheerfully greets him back. He points to the man and woman with him, saying they're his team members. The boy's name is Suon, and the girl is Himo. Chu mentions that Tesu also possesses a body capable of regeneration, just like Doma. He silently recalls his battle with that monster. Judging by its expression, it wasn't the first time it had faced a nearly immortal hunter with such powerful regeneration. Chu and Tesu sit down to chat. Tesu is part of the guard squad working like a dog. He only just got a bit of rest yesterday. He has to go back to work soon and he's completely exhausted by it. He breaks his back working, but the pay isn't even worth a single copper. Tesu lies down on this bed thinking about the future. Suddenly he has a bold idea, sitting bolt upright and asking Chu if he knows about any recent sudden disappearances. It seems Chu doesn't know anything about it either. Tesu grins from ear to ear. Recently, reports of missing persons have been increasing, and he's been secretly investigating, suspecting it might be part of a monster's plan for revenge. He stealthily followed a drunk man walking alone on the street. Suddenly, a tentacle slithered out and wrapped around the man, muffling his screams before dragging him away. A half-human, half-tentacle monster emerged. Tesu, who was watching, witnessed everything. That was how he confirmed that the monsters were kidnapping people. Tesu figured he could find the monsters' hidden territory if he tracked them to the north. Seeing that Chu seemed interested, Tesu was secretly pleased, but he maintained a serious facade, crossing his arms and explaining they had come up from underground, asserting the monsters were abducting people beyond the border to serve some immortal master. He also knew that they only operated at night and had discovered one of their lairs. Chu thoughtfully stroked his chin, lost in thought. Tesu, feeling the bait wasn't tempting enough, decided to drop another piece of information. He feigned concern. Although he wasn't sure, it seemed like all the abducted people were from the village. Just as he expected, Changgu couldn't ignore it after hearing that. Tesu was inwardly ecstatic. He told Chu that if he was interested, he could become the commander of a hunter squad. Chu stood up. He refused the commander position, saying he didn't understand the situation well enough. If he were in charge, it would be a total disaster. Changgu raised his hand and suggested Tesu be the commander instead. Tesu grinned from ear to ear. He was overjoyed that he had successfully roped in Chu and his team. He absent-mindedly blurted out his true intentions, but Chu, being good-natured, didn't pay it much mind. Tesu, feeling like a scumbag, felt a pang of guilt and dramatically hugged Gu while fake crying. Tesu rushed outside and told the 3 disciples to get some rest. They would be departing at sunset. While waiting, Changgu meditated to calm his mind. Tesu couldn't believe it, telling him to rest, but then seeing him conversing with the sacred power. He turned to Doma and asked what his ability was. He needed to know his skills to assign him a role. Doma sighed, saying his skill was just an incomplete version of himself, lacking any special abilities like regeneration. Tesu's jaw dropped as he asked, "Are you an idiot? Why are you talking to the sacred power?" Doma replied that he was still trying. But why did he have to sit here now talking to a noisy old man like Tesu? Tesu asked where he grew up to have such poor manners. Doma remained silent. He didn't press him any further. Tesu stood up and told everyone to get ready to move. The group traveled to a cliff and took up positions there. Tesu said this was the monster's lair. His team had been tracking them for 2 days now, and after a short wait, the monsters appeared. They were forcing people into a cage and dragging it away. The people inside were still alive, crying and begging for their lives in despair. Doma couldn't hold back and was about to charge forward, but Tesu stopped him. However, Doma was a reckless one, and he wouldn't listen to anyone. He knew better than anyone what it felt like to be captured by a monster, and he had to get his revenge. Tesu grabbed him by the collar, stopping him from moving forward. He glared at Doma, warning that if he saved those people now, 100 more would die. He had to sacrifice a few for the greater good. Tesu told Doma that if he didn't like it, he could get lost. This was his mission. After being released, Doma didn't dare to act out recklessly again. He was forced to sit still and watch the situation unfold. Down below, just as the people in the cage were about to be eaten by the smaller minions, a much larger monster stopped them. It declared that it would be the first to feast. None of the others were to lay a hand on them. The other monster, having been stopped, grew agitated. The two monsters argued for a while. Doma let out a quiet sigh of relief. Tesu ordered everyone to proceed with caution and avoid being detected. Chu led the three disciples ahead. Tesu stayed behind, picking up stones to estimate that there were about 17 monsters left. He crushes a handful of rocks and throws them down. He needs to land a hit soon. His head is killing him. Tesu quickly follows after Changgu's group. Upon catching up, they find the place where the monster horde has gathered the cages used to imprison humans. The number of monster creatures here is significantly larger. Tesu scoffs at how stupid this monster is. It should have focused on defense before trying to expand its territory. Tesu turns to ask Chu what he thinks. He replies that there's nothing particularly special. These monsters are transporting humans, and it looks like there's a leader among them. This is their gathering point, so they've probably come to the right place. Tesu turns back and orders his three disciples into position. They will target the surplus, which is about 30 people. Below, as the monsters were marveling at their captured goods, Chu leaps down into the middle of the enemy formation. Tesu had assigned him to lure as many monsters as possible. As a seasoned hunter, Chu draws his sword and directly confronts the commander, who leaps back but is still wounded. Its limbs turn to jelly as it collapses. Chu charges forward, taking on the small fry monsters by himself. The leader, screaming for revenge, demands to know why its underlings are just standing there and not attacking. Following the order, the subordinates charge, their attention completely fixed on Chang. Meanwhile, Suan takes the opportunity to capture all the monster underlings incapable of fighting. He pulls a potion from his bag, chugs it down, and activates his sacred power EA. Sion's ability is blood control. But if he uses too much, he'll die, so he can't overuse it. On the other hand, he can control a larger amount of blood if he can mix his own into the monsters. Sion uses his blood to bind all the monsters. He turns and signals for the girl Himo to protect him quickly. Himo slams her large blade into the ground, activating her sacred power Pion. Her skill is a sacred power of regeneration. Her incredible regeneration ability can heal an opponent's skin the instant she cuts them, so no blood splatters. Even if a monster's neck is sliced in two, its blood won't spray out. Tesu touches his forehead. He calls upon the Saint Duushini, ignoring Doma, who is whining beside him, demanding to fight. Tesu grabs 2 handfuls of dirt and crushes them. Instantly, 21 monsters are decapitated. After the job is done, he sighs, complaining of a headache, saying that this way they don't need to chase them anymore. Tesu takes out a gem, shakes it to cast a charm, and gives it to the girl who was just rescued, telling her to hold on to it as the rescue team will arrive soon. She bursts into tears, thanking him profusely. The other rescued people are also grateful to the monster hunters for saving their lives. The commander, the monster bound by Suryan's blood, tries to use its strength but can't break free. It can't believe it was actually captured by a monster hunter. It looks over at Chu, realizing he fights as if he were immortal. The monster thinks if it had only used its hands, it could have taken him down. Tesu walks in and tells Himo to chop off the monster's arm, which she does without hesitation. The monster is completely shocked. It had heard rumors of someone in the army who could cut without drawing blood. It turns out to be Himo. Tesu walks up to the monsters and says he'll spare them if they can answer his question. He asks where they were planning to go after reaching this assembly point. The monster looks on blankly. It barely gets one word out before Himo decapitates it. Tesu then moves on to question the next one. The monster commander shouts that they won't answer. If they talk, their entire supply cache will be cut off. Fueled by his quest for revenge, Tesu coldly orders Himo to sever the commander's limbs and spine. Himo obeys the command. The old monster can't even sit up anymore, lying in a heap on the ground. The monster taunts Tesu's group, telling them to head north if they think they're so strong and act so immortal. They had captured many a monster hunter there. Doma couldn't stand it, saying he would put the creature out of its misery. But Tesu stopped him, telling him to just let it suffer, confident its powerful regeneration would keep it alive for more questioning. He then turned to question another monster. That one knew nothing, so it was immediately skewered. Tesu moved on to the next monster, which obediently confessed that the path was for Bildupas. Chu was surprised to hear that. He never expected a monster of that caliber, one rumored to be nearly immortal, to be mentioned in a place like this. The old monster screamed, trying to stop the other from spouting nonsense. The words had barely escaped its lips before Suryan's blood gagged it, rendering it silent. That monster continued speaking. There's a path that leads to the northern border tunnel. The entrance is right here. It told Tesu that if he let it go, it would open the entrance. The passage could only be opened with a demon's ring. Tesu happily agreed. Cooperate and he would spare its life. Otherwise, it was history. The old monster cursed the other one for being such a damn coward, asking why it would open the gate for a group of hunters. Before the old one could finish, it was fatally stabbed by that very same monster. The monster walked to a corner of the cave, activated a mechanism with its sword, and the rock wall above slowly parted, revealing an entrance. True to his word, Tesu let the monster leave. But as soon as it reached a turn, it was eliminated by another hunter squad. These were the members of the rescue team, who reported back to Tesu that the rescue was complete. They offered to provide support as the main support team had not yet returned from their own mission. Tesu led the way into the cave. Elsewhere in a secret location, an anonymous black-clad monster was reporting to its superior, Nava, that the stone gate had been opened. Nava stroked the pet in its hands, surmising that the monster hunter party would be arriving soon. It ordered its subordinate to prepare for battle before the council found out. The subordinate declared it would go slay the monster hunter team before they arrived and returned safely. The moment the words left its mouth, its head was sent flying from its shoulders. Nava reminded the corpse that a predator should never turn its back on its prey. Meanwhile, Doma's group stepped into the cavern, and after walking for what felt like an eternity without seeing anything, they decided to introduce themselves to pass the time. The three from the support team were Good, Bell, and Jin Tesu. While warming up, Doma's group asked them what their abilities were. The trio replied that they had no special powers, explaining that they were among the chosen. This was the first time Doma had ever heard of such a novel concept, so John Good explained it to him. The chosen are individuals who can exclusively wield holy power. However, the Supreme Lord helped countless people and did not wish for that power to be monopolized by just one person. That's why they still can't use any special holy abilities. Instead, they can channel the Lord's holy power without possessing it, and their proficiency with it reaches level 10 much faster than anyone else's. The trio mentioned they had all already reached level 6 or 7. Doma, frustrated, pointed at them and complained, saying that while he had to work his butt off to possess holy power, they got to use it so easily without even owning it. What a cheat! Good wasn't offended and just laughed heartily. As the three were chatting, Tesu cut the conversation short. He called them to get into formation. Tesu took the lead with the others trailing behind him. Suan asked Tesu, "Are there no monsters here?" Tesu, an experienced hunter, replied that this type of monster is incredibly proud. They're most likely employing some kind of strategy. They claim this path leads to the northern border, but we can't be certain if that's true. If it's a path that goes that far, I bet it's not going to be a pleasant road. It's likely a trap for their revenge. The group suddenly stopped. Saran heard a sound from behind and they immediately assumed a battle-ready stance. Suddenly, the surrounding walls shattered. A horde of monsters appeared. Chu quickly drew his sword and cut a swath through the monster wave in front of him. The three members of the guard team worked in perfect sync, using wind to deflect the rocks flying toward them. They were surrounded by a monster swarm and all of them were made of stone. They were all swiftly awakened monsters, so fighting them would be incredibly draining. This was another concept Doma didn't know, so he turned to Chu for an explanation. He explained that a swiftly awakened monster is one that can manifest or enhance its weapons using a demonic circle. It's like that monster Doma faced before Tu turned and shouted for Chu to focus. This isn't the time for a lesson. They were at risk of losing all their strength, but they had to hold out to keep moving forward. Before Tu could finish, Doma acted faster than he could think. He rushed forward, wielding his enhanced arm. Tu turned to blame Gu, asking why his student was so reckless. Tu then ordered the others to advance and help eliminate the monster threat. Doma used his newly enhanced arm to carve through the creatures. He was filled with excitement as he tested his new weapon. Chu watched Doma with satisfaction, noting that he could now maintain his holy power for much longer. He also focused on his own attacks. While Doma was fighting vigorously, a monster launched a surprise attack on him from a distance. It shot several tendrils at him, but he wasn't going down that easily. He counterattacked with his enhanced arm, startling the monster and knocking it back. While Doma was fighting the tentacle monster, another creature hiding on the ceiling noticed his incredible regeneration ability. It grinned slyly, planning to report this back to Nava. The tentacle monster taunted Doma, daring him to come and get it. It yelled for a proper man-to-man fight. Doma just pointed at the monster's shoulder and asked, "Is that a sword you have up there?" The tentacle monster was thrilled that someone finally noticed its blade. Doma said that sword brought back some truly awful memories. He asked the tentacle monster if it knew a creature named Vengeance. The tentacle monster seemed to recognize the name. It screamed in disbelief, wondering how Doma could have possibly defeated a monster that sought such revenge. The monster shot its tentacles toward Doma, but every single one missed. It panicked and reached for the two swords on its back, but it was too late. See you in the next life. The other monster returned to report to Nava about a nearly immortal individual whose body was capable of regeneration. Nava was pleased to hear this news. The old man stroked a pet on his arm, saying that this would be a fine gift for the master. He ordered his subordinate Huro to prepare a gift and respond to the hunter squad. Huro left to carry out his orders. Meanwhile, Tetsu's group had finished off the monster horde. They planned to rest for a moment before moving on, but it seemed something wasn't about to let them rest. Huro appeared carrying 2 blood-soaked bags filled with people. He came with a message from Nava telling them if they didn't hurry, there would be nothing left to save. Seeing the captured people, everyone was obviously enraged. He was about to charge forward, but Tetsu stopped him. He turned and asked the monster Huro where they could find and exterminate the root of this monster infestation. Huro pulled a piece of flesh from his own stomach. He kindly replied, "From where it came, of course. Did you want me to be more specific?" As if Huro laughed provocatively. Tetsu's group was furious. Huro didn't stop there. He continued to express his joy, acting like a hunter stalking human prey. He told the hunter team that if they didn't hurry, there would truly be nothing left. While Huro was gloating, Tetsu grabbed and obliterated him. He knew this was all a trap. He turned and told Suryan to prepare the blood. Suryan obeyed and activated his level 5 sacred power, using his blood to impale several monsters and then erecting a colossal wall of blood. Tu ordered Suryan to hurry and find their base. Suryan manipulated his blood, sending it exploring every nook and cranny of the cave. After a moment of searching, he turned and reported to Tetsu that he'd found a deep pool. Tetsu ordered him to focus on delving deeper into it. Suryan used his blood to drill straight through. Inside, just as expected, was Nava's base. She left the mass of blood suspended in the air, not destroying it immediately. She wanted the hunter to see what she had prepared. She ordered 2 of her subordinates to go out and welcome the hunter. Suryan reported that the chasm was too deep. His blood couldn't travel any further. Tu replied that this must be the right place. He told him to retract his power and mark the path. After all, the monster horde was expecting them to enter. Suryan marked the path with his blood before retracting his ability. Tetsu's team followed the trail, heading straight into the monster's den. Nava and her subordinates were already waiting there. Upon seeing Nava, Doma indignantly questioned a nearby monster. "Who the hell is that sitting there like she's some big shot?" The monster didn't deign to answer, ignoring him completely. Annoyed, Doma sliced its head clean off with a single hand chop. He then turned and gave a defiant smirk to the other monsters. The horde remained motionless, awaiting orders. He smirked and then single-handedly tore through their ranks, slaughtering the monster horde. Nava was displeased by Doma's insolence. "We were about to have a pleasant conversation and you've already started fighting." Tu didn't stop Doma, instead sneering at Nava's group. This was always going to end in a fight for revenge anyway. "Might as well get it over with." Nava snorted disdainfully. "This is precisely why I detest children, especially the overconfident ones who don't know their place." She snapped her fingers and a door in the corner opened, revealing a group of people in handcuffs. They looked around in terror, completely disoriented. Tetsu's group immediately tensed up and Nava burst into laughter, ordering the monsters in the room to begin devouring the humans. Instantly, Babu, the monster horde that had been passively taking Doma's hits, lunged toward the humans like starved beasts. Tetsu's team scrambled to slay the monsters and protect the people, while she let the hunter team and the monster horde fight it out, knowing that once they exhausted themselves, everything would be under her control. Chu struggled to fight while protecting the civilians, leaving him no openings to attack the monster swarm. The hunter team was in a difficult position. Tetsu told Suryan to try and buy him some time, but Suryan replied that he couldn't hold on for much longer. He had already expended too much of his blood while scouting the way in. As Tetsu's team was pushed into a corner, Nava continued to leisurely watch the spectacle. Chu gritted his teeth in frustration, swearing he would get his revenge and personally snap that hag's neck. He drew his sword and unleashed a powerful slash. The monster horde before him was cut down. Tu turned to the civilians and urged them to run past, but they still hesitated, fearful of being killed if they made a run for it. Only after Himo guaranteed their safety did the people finally start to move in a single line. Tetsu ordered the others to stick close and protect the civilians, while he would take charge of those who had yet to move. Watching from above, Nava erupted in laughter. Tetsu's group sent their strongest to rescue the humans? How disastrous for them. She turned and gave an order to one of her subordinates, who immediately leaped down from the platform. Meanwhile, Doma was gleefully farming the monster fodder when Nava's subordinate suddenly charged in. The underling landed a single punch that sent Doma, despite his famed regeneration, flying out of sight. Tu was completely baffled. He couldn't figure out if this new monster was specifically targeting Doma's near-immortal body due to his regeneration or if this was another attempt to split their forces. Suryan and Himo told Tesu not to worry and to go save Doma. They would handle the monsters here. Tesu left with a quick, "Take care," and went to find Doma. Nava smirked contemptuously, rising from her chair. She believed the strongest warrior of the hunter team had already left. She would finish off the ones here. Himo told Suryan to back her up. She would take the woman down. Doma, who had been sent flying, finally skidded to a halt. Nava's subordinate was still in hot pursuit. The monster swung its fist, punching him once more. But this time Doma managed to raise his arm and block it. The creature let out a surprised "Oh!" not expecting him to be able to stop its attack. Doma gritted his teeth and shoved the monster's arm away. He declared he was like a lizard's tail, not some damn body with regeneration. Before long, Tesu caught up to them. He threw a punch at the monster, but it simply tilted its head and dodged. He stated he wanted to end this quickly. He was not happy right now. In an instant, Nava's subordinate deduced Tesu's ability. The creature realized he attacked by inducing headaches before aiming for a mental assault. The monster showed no fear whatsoever. It commented, praising Tesu's attack as not bad, but not nearly enough to break its horn. The creature activated the circlet on its head, drawing a longsword from it. Tesu realized this guy was no damn pushover. He was an awakened monster. Tesu said he needed time to achieve the Duoxini level divine possession, so Doma had to protect him carefully. That was all Doma needed to hear. He activated his sacred power, ready for battle. However, the monster completely ignored him, brushing past Doma and raising its sword toward Tesu. Although Doma quickly intercepted the monster's blade, it still managed to sever Tesu's left arm. Doma swung a punch, forcing the monster to leap back. Tesu's severed arm was quickly restored by his regeneration. The monster burst out laughing with glee, unable to believe it had encountered two individuals with regeneration. Doma gripped his sword and charged the monster. It swung its blade, cleanly severing one of his legs. Doma gritted his teeth. He had used over 100% of his strength, yet his bones were still cut away so easily. The monster intended to ignore Doma and target Tesu, but Doma's speed was incredible. His leg had already healed and he charged in to attack once more. No matter how many times the monster slashed him, his wounds healed rapidly and he kept on charging, a warrior seemingly driven by revenge. Doma swung a fist at the monster. It cut again with lightning speed and Doma's arm grew right back. As he continued to advance, the monster ducked to evade, then swung its sword to send Doma flying. He managed to block with his own sword, so he was only knocked back, miraculously without a single scratch this time. Doma got up, ripped off his shirt, and grinned with excitement, ready for the next round. The monster smirked tauntingly. "If you've got the guts, then come on!" Doma charged toward the monster. It swung its sword, severing his arm. Doma's arm quickly grew back his regeneration, even forming a new weapon as he counterattacked. But it was damn useless. His attacks were like tickling the monster. It blocked his fist with one hand and then kicked him, sending him flying 8 meters away. Doma panted heavily but still taunted the creature. "If you've got what it takes, then kill me." "You can't. I'm practically immortal." The monster knew exactly how to defeat Doma. It just needed to slice his body into tiny pieces to prevent his regeneration from working, causing his mind to gradually lose consciousness. No matter how tough someone is, they'll eventually break. The monster swung its sword, slashing across his torso. It was too fast for Doma to raise his sword and block. He was repeatedly slashed by the monster from every direction. Seeing he was about to be torn to shreds, he resorted to a different tactic. Doma threw his sword at the monster and then made a run for it. Doma swiftly gets behind the monster, putting it in a chokehold from the rear. He takes a deep breath and screams into its ear. The monster rips off Doma's arm, but he quickly uses his regeneration to grow his arm back, maintaining his grip on the monster's neck while punching it. The monster struggles endlessly but can't break free. Doma bursts into a maniacal laugh. He threateningly holds his hand in front of the creature's face, intending to gouge out the monster's eye. It lets out a cry and shuts its eyes tight. The monster slams its back against the stone wall. It repeatedly smashes itself from side to side, but Doma refuses to let go. But then one of his arms falls off. The monster, not paying attention, gets punched in the face by Doma as it turns. The monster rolls a few times on the ground, thinking this guy is completely insane. While it's still struggling with Doma, Tesu has already finished his business on the other side. The monster suddenly remembers and rushes towards Tesu, realizing it can't let him live any longer. He's too dangerous. The monster swings its sword at Tesu and Doma jumps in to intercept. But it's too late. Tesu has transformed into someone with ridiculously long hair. He opens his eyes and both Doma and the monster collapse to the ground, clutching their heads and crying out in pain. Tesu approaches the writhing monster, raises his hand and clenches it. The monster which was screaming just a moment ago is now a lifeless heap. Inside Tesu, the divine being of holy power scolds him for using all his strength just to deal with that one monster. The being demands his head in exchange for using its full power. Tesu agrees. His head is crushed only for a new one to grow back thanks to his powerful regeneration. He sits up wearily rubbing his new head. Doma can't process what just happened. Tesu turns and gives him a brief explanation. Because he used all his power. His head was the sacrifice, but he remains effectively immortal because the divine being despises him too much to let him die. Tesu gets up and calls for the bewildered Doma to come back. He's still in shock. Tesu lost his head, but he's completely fine. It's insane that his own head can't do that. Doma chases after Tesu, questioning him. Isn't the head supposed to be the weak point for a body with regeneration? How could it heal? Tesu says he doesn't fully understand his regeneration abilities either, but his head isn't his weak point. Doma presses him with questions, but Tesu doesn't want to answer. He says he'll tell him after they complete their mission. Meanwhile, on Suryan and Hemo's side, the two are facing the old hag Nava. After a brief exchange of blows, Suryan is already panting and being healed by Hemo. Nava stands there leisurely with her hands on her hips. She's also getting tired of attacking, only for Hemo to heal him back to his original state. Suryan gets up and shoots blood towards a monster lying nearby. He wants to end this quickly to save time. Hemo asks if he can still use his blood magic as he's already used quite a lot. Suryan says it's fine and tells Hemo to just fight and support him from behind. If he focuses on defense, he can protect her. Hemo activates level 5 of her holy power control and the spear in her hand changes slightly. Nava finds it strange that holy power can be channeled into a dead object. Hemo charges forward with her spear, annoyed that Nava would speak of her weapon that way. A true hunter's weapon like hers is made from the heart of a special tree, not some dead object. Nava cackles, holding out her hand. The pet on her arm spits out a black ring which forms a shield. She raises the shield to block Hemo's spear. She looks smug, convinced that no matter how hard Hemo tries, she can't penetrate this dragon shield of hers. The ring on Nava's head also begins to leak a fluid that covers her body like tattoos, and she casually plucks a feather from her backside, which transforms into a large sword. She charges forward to attack Hemo, who raises her spear to block the sword's path. Nava looks on with smug contempt. Hemo swung the pommel of her spear, sending the monster flying to create some distance. Nava leaped into the air, clicked her tongue, and continuously fired feather quills toward Hemo. But her feathers were blocked by Sujan. Seizing the opening while she was distracted, Sujan swung his spear, slashing at her from above. She was slammed into the ground. Hemo then launched another strike straight down, but Nava raised her shield to block the attack again. Golden leaves from Hemo's spear scattered everywhere. Nava was gloating because her shield was impenetrable when Hemo began relentlessly thrusting her spear toward her. Those scattered golden leaves flew in to surround Nava, and she realized something was terribly wrong. Immediately, a thicket of trees sprouted from the leaves, completely surrounding the monster. While Nava was dodging the trees erupting from the ground, Hemo attacked from above. The creature ducked to avoid it, but Sujan seized the opportunity and shot his blood to envelop her. Nava realized the situation was going south, so she spun her hands rapidly to deflect the strange projectiles rushing toward her. If that stuff hit her weak spot, it would be game over. Nava tensed every muscle in her lower body for defense. Just as she was about to sigh in relief for blocking everything, blood shot straight up from the ground. Nava leaned back to dodge, only to see Hemo attacking from above again. Hemo swung her weapon and the creature blocked with her shield, but it was clear Nava was at a disadvantage, so she pulled another trick. Nava activated her deadwood weapon, aiming to slice through Hemo's spear. Hemo was forced to retreat as Nava's attack hit the ceiling, causing rubble to rain down. Only then did Nava unleash her true power. She swung her shield, firing a barrage of black blades at the two of them. Just when the two of them didn't know how to react, Changgu returned. With a single swing of his sword, the hunter deflected all of Nava's blades. He told Sujan and Hemo to fall back and join the raid team, saying they needed to end this quickly. Other hunters rushed in from outside. Changgu ordered them to search for survivors while he dealt with this monster. Nava looked at him with contempt, clearly not considering him a threat. Changgu ignored her provocation. He closed his eyes for a moment before transforming. Changgu's entire body was suddenly covered in white fur. Meanwhile, Doma and Tesu were still running back to the starting point. He was deep in thought, wondering if a body with such powerful regeneration truly had no weaknesses as the two were running. Tesu suddenly stopped pulling out the stone in his hand and holding it up defensively, thinking he had encountered a monster. But it turned out to be a group from the reserve team. After a brief exchange of greetings, Tesu continued running for his life. He followed the trail and breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing that Sujan and Hemo were safe. Elsewhere, Changgu let out a roar and swung his blade toward Nava. She used her old trick again, raising her shield to block. She then swung her shield, launching a volley of blades forward. But the blades didn't fly at Changgu. They curved past him, heading for Sujan and Himo behind him. Nava gave a cunning smile. Seeing Changgu turn his back, she lunged forward for a cheap shot, seeking her revenge. But Changgu was no amateur. He smirked and swiftly swung his sword to counterattack. If Nava hadn't raised her shield to protect her face in time, she would have been completely obliterated. She was sent flying back, unable to believe it. How insane. On the other side, Himo and Sujan were completely unharmed because Tesu had returned to protect them. Nava gritted her teeth at the sight of him. That meant her seemingly immortal underlings had been defeated. She had severely underestimated Tesu. Changgu eyed Nava, sizing her up. Her shield was certainly interesting. It was rare for anything to block his attack, but he had noticed one thing. Even if the shield could take the hit, Nava's arm couldn't endure another blow. Changgu swung his sword and slashed toward her. Nava's hands trembled as she raised her shield again. Her arm was in bad shape. She blocked the blow, but her arm felt like it was about to shatter. Chu closed in on her, raising his sword and telling her to hold her shield tight. Then Changgu used his sword to send Nava's shield flying. Her arm went flying right along with it. Her jaw dropped in disbelief. She had been far too confident in her weapon, completely ignorant of her own strengths and weaknesses. Chu lunged forward, plunging his sword straight into Nava's chest. She coughed up blood and died, collapsing in a heap on the ground. The rescue team returned, reporting they had scoured the area and found no one else. They did find and eliminate another monster or two. Chu told them to return, that they didn't need to follow him any further. Nava, on the verge of death, was still gasping for air and coughing weakly. Yet she still had the strength to laugh. She claimed this was all part of her plan. This was her final act of revenge, ensuring that even in death she would drag everyone here down with her. Chu couldn't understand what she was muttering about. From a distance, Teo called for him to come back. Suddenly, Chu's attention was drawn to a hole in the wall. He yelled out a warning, "Everyone get away from that hole!" A fearsome monster then stepped out from the darkness within. The creature stepped out with a smirk, announcing he was here to settle a debt. He glanced at the large group of hunter-class opponents but showed no fear. He told them to surrender quickly if they valued their lives. Chu Tianfeng unleashed a powerful slash toward the monster. The attack missed him instead, carving a long gash across the floor. Changgu seemed to recognize this monster. It was Ban. He warned the monster to get lost if it knew what was good for it. Ban's full name was the gluttonous monster Ban. He hadn't come alone either, bringing his forces with him. He looked at Chu with a challenging gaze. What should he do? Chu's expression hardened. He had no intention of letting this go. Ban smirked disdainfully. He raised his hand and the surrounding cave began to tremble violently. Chu yelled for the others to fall back. He declared he would handle Ban. Teo disagreed. If Chu was planning a one-on-one fight, then he would have to intervene as well. Besides Ban, there was another figure completely shrouded in a cloak. Teo ordered the people behind him to hold their positions. Chu told Ban to scram. A fight between them here would cause too many complications. Ban's face was a mask of pure contempt. He scoffed, doubting Chu could even touch a being like him who was practically immortal with that six-tailed sword. Chu's face grew grim-looking, as if he was about to charge at any second. Ban took a deep breath and then burst out laughing. It was as if a switch flipped in his head and he suddenly changed his mind, deciding not to engage today. Ban ordered his subordinate to open a gate so they could leave. The subordinate performed some sort of ritual and the cave began to crack and crumble. The monster lord walked arrogantly into the portal and vanished. The ground in the cave started to shatter, throwing the group into chaos. Chu said, "Tell you manage things here. I'm going down to check it out." Tesu turned and gave a signal to Suryan. Hemo, who was afraid of blood, quickly jumped onto Tesu's back for safety. Suryan took a deep breath, then grabbed Tesu's arm to draw out his blood. The blood flowed like a river, forming a protective barrier around everyone. Outside, Chu pointed his sword straight up. He shattered the ceiling, creating an escape route for the people behind him. Once the job was done, Changgu returned to his normal form. He let out a breath, his task complete. The rest of the group was also brought up safely by Suryan. The moment he landed on solid ground, Suryan collapsed from exhaustion. He had lost too much blood today and was feeling faint. Himo, still on Tesu's back, raised her hand and promised she would use her regeneration ability to make him as good as new. Chu also coughed up the mouthful of blood. Himo went over to heal him next. Himo suddenly noticed Nava's snake slithering in a corner, attempting to flee. She shouted, drawing everyone's attention to it. The startled snake recoiled and bumped right into Doma's leg. The well-behaved snake affectionately coiled around his leg, trying to act as cute as it possibly could. But unfortunately for the creature, it had tried to flatter too many people. Doma didn't hesitate to lift his foot and stomp it flat. He was so shocked he vomited. The chaotic mess of earth and rock outside, caused by Changgu, made everyone sigh in disbelief. Doma was growing extremely impatient. He wanted to know the physical weakness of his regeneration ability. Alright, since Doma wanted to know, Tesu didn't hide it. The body's weak point is the area from the spine to the head. As I've said, it doesn't matter if your head explodes or gets cut off, highlighting your near-immortal nature. However, it all depends on where the wound is inflicted. This means if a monster or anyone attacks you anywhere from the spine to the head, your regeneration won't work at all. Doma listened in utter confusion, wondering how Tesu knew this. It turns out Tesu had once dealt with a foe who also had the power of regeneration. After his lower body was severed, he was paralyzed and couldn't move. I slit his throat to end him, but he just continued to regenerate. I could only finish that monster off by striking his head. That's why he abandoned his weapon. Tesu speculated that perhaps Doma's parents also possessed this regeneration ability, or perhaps they were just ordinary people. Tesu further revealed that the true nature of this power might differ for each person, surprising Doma yet again. That's enough talk for today. Tesu quickly said goodbye to Doma and slipped away. A few days later at the Monster Hunter headquarters, first thing in the morning, Doma was banging on Tesu's door like a debt collector, which annoyed Tesu to no end. Doma was eager to hear the rest of the story from the previous day. Desperate to learn more about the true power he needed to enact his revenge. Tesu, completely speechless, could only wearily lead Doma inside. The true nature of our power is strength itself. How long do you think it takes for someone to channel their full power into their body? 10 seconds or 20 seconds? Normally it's just a matter of time before we can control the power within our bodies. That's the reason we can fight at full strength for short bursts of time. Normal fighters need to conserve their strength and apply just enough to overwhelm their opponent. But we don't have to do that. Even if our lungs explode from a lack of oxygen, or if our hearts can't withstand the immense shock and power, we can still use our regeneration to bring them back. But fatigue still affects our bodies. This means we can only push ourselves to an amount of power that we can still regenerate from. Tesu explained in a long spiel. Doma couldn't wrap his head around how someone who's exhausted could possibly fight at their full strength. After explaining forever to no avail, an annoyed Tesu pointed towards a treadmill on the other side of the room, demanding that Doma get on it and run. Doma sighed and stepped onto the machine, Tesu's voice echoing behind him. Don't just run with everything you have. While you're running, you must convince yourself that you are completely exhausted, and that is the trigger the body needs to call upon its true power. In other words, Doma first needs to control his mind, then run at full power while completely ignoring every physical reaction his body throws at him. It's much easier said than done. Doma clenched every muscle, gritted his teeth, and started running with the force of a freight train, pushing himself like never before. Tesu watched from the side, feeling slightly intimidated because Doma had already been running nonstop for a full hour and he still looked incredibly comfortable. It seemed Tesu had underestimated Doma's potential. While Doma was running like a madman, Tesu opened the door to leave, telling him to keep running until he returned. Meeting Chu outside, Tesu mentioned that Doma was a kid with incredible potential, perhaps enough to become the greatest hunter of them all. Tesu believes that running is one of the fundamentals. The more he runs, the more his body will change. Tesu gently patted Changgu on the shoulder, curious if he planned to teach Doma swordsmanship. Who knows, what if he chooses to use a sword instead of that bizarre arm? Tesu remarked, turning away. Gu, however, didn't seem to agree, offering a faint, strained smile. Meanwhile, in the room, Doma was still running for his life, gasping for breath. John Gu took this chance to break some bad news to Tesu. The entire operation of the high-ranking fleet had been postponed. For Tesu, however, this seemed like good news. He was visibly thrilled and suddenly bolted forward as if a ghost were on his tail. As he was running, an overly friendly old man from a nearby room grabbed him, causing Tesu to yelp in surprise. Doma's life had recently fallen into a repetitive cycle: run, sleep, and eat. This monotonous and grueling routine repeated day in and day out. Because of this, Changgu would occasionally visit Doma to share some news about the new faction. Master Changgu was part of the Advanced Division, and the Protection Corps was slated to be deployed for defensive operations. When a new faction was established to find the clan's supply routes, Taysen was forced to join the operation despite being someone who'd flee at the first opportunity. Taysen was appointed as the captain of the new faction. John Gu explained that after Taysen was assigned the mission, he became one of the world's most formidable, almost immortal figures. Shortly thereafter, they began searching for any possible locations along the clan's supply route. They eventually discovered 7 distinct paths. To prevent a bloody revenge from the monster hordes, they began to infiltrate these routes. But just as they expected, there was no trace of human presence along the clan's supply lines. The only welcome they received was from hordes of vile monster creatures. The entire party pressed on scouting until they reached the end of each route. In the end, all 7 routes were blocked and they could no longer continue their search. The hunter team had no choice but to withdraw without any concrete findings. They deliberately blocked the paths with rubble to ensure no one could ever return or use them again. The party later returned to continue searching the remaining supply routes. The number of potential locations dwindled as the prolonged search wore on. Furthermore, the other faction reduced its territory and constructed a new barrier to prevent a repeat of past events. By the time it was all over, Doma had become famous for his incredible stamina running non-stop all day to boost his regeneration. Doma guzzled water, his entire body drenched in sweat from the exhaustive training. Doma, you've got to take a break. If you keep running like your life depends on it, you're going to end up kicking the bucket sooner or later. The other hunter squads passing by were utterly astonished to see Doma actually walking for the first time. Seeing Doma in a fresh set of clothes, Tesu was surprised and wondered if he had finally reached his goal. This has become normal for me. I can endure any hardship now. But Sir Tesu, why do you look so irritated? Doma asked, knitting his brows. Tesu wasn't annoyed in the slightest. On the contrary, he was thrilled because the manager had granted him an extended vacation. Tesu kept whispering taunts into Doma's ear, which only mildly annoyed him. After the spiky-haired Tesu finally left, Doma went to find Gu, who was standing pensively by a cliff lost in thought. Gu liked to come here on his days off as the place brought him a sense of peace. The master and student stood watching the sunset for a long while. Master, Doma finally said, "Can I ask a favor of you? I want to learn swordsmanship." Chu, though a bit surprised, replied with a smirk, "Swordsmanship. All right. But where is your weapon? Wouldn't it be difficult without a sword? I have an idea. I've been thinking a lot during my training and came up with several concepts. One of them will become my weapon. Just give me 1 week and I'll have chosen it." Doma answered confidently. Chu praised this bold go-getter. He then pointed to the river ahead of Doma and said, "If you follow that river, you'll find a very high mountain. I will teach you swordsmanship there for 1 week." Hearing this, Doma was incredibly excited, promising to prepare thoroughly. 1 week later, Doma was ready at the crack of dawn with a pile of bloody human hands, his whole body in a ready stance waiting for Chu. Chu looked at the mountain-like pile of hands at Doma's feet and was at a loss for words. Since Doma could only control his holy power through his hands, he planned to use that flow of power and his incredible regeneration to forge a sword from his own arm. Seeing Chu's disbelief, Doma rolled up his sleeves, let out a yell, and leaped down, intending to turn this place into a mountain of hands to show Chu what a true monster he was. Doma quickly severed his own wrist to release his holy power, injecting enough energy to create bone, and then shaping that energy into the form of a sword. It was surreal. Just like that, Doma had created a massive giant sword from his own bone, a testament to his almost immortal body. Chu's jaw dropped when he saw that Doma could truly control the flow of energy within his body. Before teaching Doma swordsmanship, Chu insisted they move somewhere else immediately. This place piled high with Doma's hands was making Chu sick to his stomach. After reaching a suitable place to learn the art of the sword, Chu finally began to teach Doma the first steps. The first thing you need to do is release your holy power. I'll show you how it's done, so just follow my lead. First, let the holy power flow through the sword, but you can't push too much into it at once, so you need to focus on projecting the energy beyond your body's limits. And then that current will flow out easily just like you did earlier. Chu demonstrated with powerful direct movements as he instructed, leaving Doma in awe. He immediately imitated Chu, letting the holy power flow through his sword. A surge of force instantly crackled to life. Very good. However, in that form it doesn't have enough power, because it's too dispersed. So instead, you need to focus the power onto the tip of the sword. You must concentrate the energy you want to release into the sword and then channel it to the tip as quickly as possible. As Chu spoke, he unleashed a booming strike against the cliff face as an example for Doma. Doma watched with his mouth agape, then tried to focus his mind and imitate what Chu had just done. With a loud crash, the cliff face in front of him was blown to bits by the force of Doma's attack. Doma was absolutely ecstatic, feeling one step closer to his ultimate revenge. He had successfully learned a special skill. Until now, his attacks were simple moves that just depended on. Chu then demonstrated another example. After channeling his holy power to the tip of the sword, Chu quickly discharged it from the blade, and an enormous force immediately erupted with immense destructive power, creating a heaven-shaking explosion. You could call it an explosion of holy power. After letting the holy power gather, you release that energy as quickly as possible to turn it into an explosion. And to make that energy even stronger, you can effectively double its power. As Chu spoke, he spun and unleashed a strike, a perfect demonstration that left Doma dazzled with admiration for the ultimate hunter. Even if it's the same skill, the effectiveness and the amount of damage dealt will vary depending on the sharpness of the energy. The sharper you can make the energy, the more you can perfect the technique, Chang-gu explained. Doma recalled using his energy to shape bone into a sword, and after a few moments of contemplation, he immediately began to practice. The Monster King on the other side was quite displeased to learn that humans were shrinking his territory, delaying his plans for revenge by erecting a defensive barrier. However, the news that the fruit of the encased seed had finally opened after 300 years made him incredibly intrigued. Their day of execution is fast approaching. Meanwhile, Doma kept failing despite his attempts to condense his holy power and release it in an explosion. The challenge is that I have to control the holy power and then make it explode. I thought it would be simple because I created the sword so easily, I just had to make a sharper flow of energy run through the bone. But there's a huge difference between sharpening the flow and making it explode. I think this is even harder than continuously channeling energy. This is a completely arduous challenge for me, Doma thought to himself while clutching his head. Chu's voice echoed from afar, telling him to take a break for breakfast, but the stubborn Doma refused to stop. There's no need to rush. If you actually succeed, you'll just blow up this entire hill, Chu added, which left Doma quite confused. Practicing endlessly without success made Doma frustrated enough to curse. The attack was indeed linked to his power, but the resulting gash was still far too shallow. Something seems to be off, Chu observed from a distance, admiring how quickly Doma was learning. The way he pushes himself beyond his limits, I can see he's trying very hard. He is gradually moving on to the next step, Chu thought to himself. After a quick meal, the two resumed their training. The sword Doma had been practicing with since morning, far from being immortal, began to rot and emit a terrible stench, forcing him to discard it. Chu then handed Doma a wooden sword and suggested they spar. Doma thought he had misheard, his eyes wide with alarm as he stammered, unable to form words. Seeing that Chu was serious, Doma eagerly charged forward with his sword, but strangely he couldn't land a single hit. Chu moved nimbly, dodging like a squirrel, and even took the opportunity to land a few excruciatingly painful blows on Doma's head. Despite his amazing regeneration, Doma grew frustrated as he swung his sword wildly but couldn't touch a single hair on Chang-gu, who continuously targeted his head. Doma's temper flared and he resolved to fight back with all his might. Thanks to his undying determination, Doma gradually began to counter Chang-gu's attacks. He grew more vigorous, his swordsmanship becoming more proficient with every exchange, which left Chang-gu quite satisfied. From then on, Doma's routine was to destroy the surrounding hills with his holy power every morning. Then he would spar with Chu in the afternoon. After several months of arduous training, Doma reached a level of power where he could truly fight his master on equal footing, using his own abilities. The two were now evenly matched. They could finally have a proper one-on-one duel. That afternoon, Chu suggested Doma take a short rest before they departed. Doma felt a bit regretful that he hadn't cleared all the hills before they had to leave. So while Chu rested, he went off to destroy a few more. Doma's stubbornness left Chang-gu speechless. That night, a horde of monsters attempting to attack the city walls was intercepted by a group of demon hunters using lightning and firepower. However, this barrage was barely enough to scratch an itch and stood no chance of stopping the monster onslaught. The rampart began to crack under the assault, and as the horde of monsters grew, the panicked hunter squad was thrown into chaos. Fortunately, just then, two blasts of power erupted from Master Qian and Doma's positions, obliterating the threat in a timely manner. In a flash, Doma unleashed his power and spectacularly splattered the entire monster horde. The other hunters could only stare at each other, bewildered by his incredible strength. While Chu charged forward for a direct assault, Doma stormed ahead on the opposite side to handle the monsters, his battle lust fully ignited. In the pitch-black forest, Chu ran at breakneck speed, chasing the creatures, all while feeling that something was off. If their goal was to break the defenses, they would have sent awakened monsters. But I don't see a single one, Chu thought to himself. A one-eyed monster, towering and aggressive, lunged to grab Chu. "You son of a..." With a single powerful swing of his sword, Chu sent the monster's head flying, its body collapsing in the other direction. I know a golem-type monster could smash the rampart, but are there really only golem types here? Chu wondered in confusion. Meanwhile, on Doma's side, he was practicing the powers Master Qian had taught him with all his might. The thrill of combat made Doma feel incredibly exhilarated. He had realized the true power of regeneration. Using it in actual combat was incredibly convenient. The hunter squad, watching from a distance, couldn't stop whispering among themselves about Doma's power. He's not only releasing a massive amount of holy power, but his technique is much more refined. It's been a while, but he's clearly gotten much stronger. The man in red praised Doma in admiration. Ron, on the other hand, with his perm, was seething with jealousy toward Doma. He impulsively jumped down, boasting that he would prove he was much stronger than Doma. So while Doma was busy cutting down the monsters, Ron descended from above, calling down bolts of lightning that burned the creatures to a crisp. That's how you deal with them instead of just wildly swinging a weapon like you. It's always best to finish them in a single blow, he said with a boastful laugh. But then the monsters behind him staggered back to their feet, their rapid regeneration making them seem almost immortal. This left him looking a bit awkward. Hello, you done dealing with them yet? Doma, getting his petty revenge, stood nearby, practically dying of laughter. Ignoring the dumbfounded Rain, he went back to relentlessly hacking through the monsters like a butcher. We'll see who's the real frog in the well by the end of this. With legendary persistence, Ron once again fired a level 7 control beam overflowing with killing intent. His blast of magic made the earth crumble and trees topple as if a Category 11 hurricane had just swept through. Amidst that violent spectacle, Ran relentlessly unleashed booming attacks that shook the very heavens, forcing Doma to cover his ears from the noise. Why is he aiming at the ground instead of the monsters? Doma was completely speechless, standing still as a statue while watching the guy vent his frustration. From a distance, the man in red was also dazzled by the sheer magical power his friend was creating. He was so embarrassed he couldn't even lift his head. But Ron, completely carried away, continued his frenzied assault on the ground and no one could stop him. By the time he was exhausted, not only were the monsters gone, but the entire surrounding landscape had been utterly obliterated. The man in red, Dong-suk, rushed over to his troublemaking friend and cheerfully greeted Master Cheon. Seeing Chu's worried expression about the wall, Dong-suk immediately reassured him that he had reinforced the surrounding area so no one was in danger. Seeing Doma's eyes currently dark like a panda's from sleepiness, Dong-suk then suggested taking the master and disciple duo Chung-gu to a nearby place to rest. This Dong-suk guy was certainly much kinder than his troublemaking friend. Deep in the forest, the group of Hunter S were secretly lying in wait. They were gathering information while sending some of their own back to headquarters to report on the horde of Monster S, rapidly gathering in one spot. The group of Hunter S leaped down from the trees, each splitting off in a different direction to act. Unexpectedly, in an instant, Dewey Hook was struck through the chest by a magic beam, fainting on the spot. The two remaining Hunter S anxiously ran over to check the situation. This magical blast was so powerful that it shattered the holy powered sword of the female hunter in the group. It was truly beyond imagination. The gray-haired hunter also unfortunately suffered the same fate as his friend, meeting a bitter end, leaving only the female hunter alive. But her fate was no luckier, as she was ultimately executed by a monster riding Bear's bloodsteed. This act of brutal revenge silenced her permanently about the night's events. Under the decisive crack of the gunshots, no life could possibly hold on. The next morning, Doma was in a state of extreme boredom from having to rest. Doma looked so bored he was about to go crazy and vent his frustration. Seeing Doma so idle, Chu suggested they test his combat power. To put it simply, it's merely a test of your strength. It's a strength test to see what level you're at. Besides, you've been with me for almost all this time. So let's see how you fight when I'm not around. Although Doma agreed, he hesitated slightly because he didn't want to act without Chu. Encouraged by Changgu, Doma finally regained his confidence, promising to do his best. 1 hour later, Doma was present for the strength evaluation. After a few hours of mind-numbing waiting for the other contenders to show their skills, it was finally Doma's turn. The moment the judge saw him, he guessed that Doma looked very experienced in combat, and was eager to see if he could break the stone block. The judges were left speechless when they learned Doma had no skills and only achieved an incomplete level of control. If you have incomplete control, you will have to endure a great deal of pain during combat. Do you think we're joking? You should know that the pain will intensify when you move, and you'll also lose a lot of energy. A person with such control would normally only be on the midline. It's a huge issue determining whether you can even pass. This guy, the judge coughed, losing his composure and yelling in Doma's face. It's true that incomplete control is extremely painful, but if you're experienced enough, you can completely control the pain, right? So what's the problem? Doma's stubborn reply, hinting at an almost immortal tolerance for pain, made the judges absolutely furious. He was even called an idiot by Doma, which made the old judge so furious he looked like he was about to have a heart attack on the spot. After realizing Doma was only swearing to summon his holy power, the old judge swallowed his pride and let Doma demonstrate his ability. Before everyone's astonished eyes, Doma suddenly broke his own arm, which then reformed into a sword through some kind of incredible regeneration, shocking everyone to their core. Doma swung the sword, straining to push his holy power to its maximum, then unleashed a flurry of force that caused the entire floor to crack into pieces. The very space around them shook continuously. Doma's power had successfully shattered the stone block, earning gasps of awe from everyone watching. Only after turning the entire area into a desolate pile of rubble did Doma finally stop. The examiner later approached Doma's master, endlessly praising the boy's superior sacred energy. Chu explained sheepishly that he initially took Doma as a student because of the boy's burning desire for revenge against the monster horde. But now I truly see his potential. I believe having a great student is the ultimate proof of a teacher's skill. That kind of hatred can be easily channeled. Besides, even if that feeling was just a passing phase, you're incredibly skilled for guiding a spirit like that. Guide him well and let him become your pride and honor. The examiner cheerfully patted Changgu on the shoulder and continued. Doma's reputation exploded everywhere after the competition. Everyone was buzzing about how he used his bare hand as a sword and even dared to curse out the examiner. The constant whispers about Doma were making his so-called friends green with envy. Just then, they happened to run into Himo and Suan. The pair hurried over to greet Doma, making Ron even more jealous that Doma seemed to know everyone. At the mention of a sparring match, Ron imagined a defeated Doma lying at his feet and let out a cocky sneer, challenging Doma to a one-on-one duel. Himo wanted in too, so Ron decided on a 2-on-2 match where they'd fight until bones were broken. But Dongshuk was hesitant, recalling how they weren't allowed any time for regeneration during the match proceeded anyway, with the rule that using control was permitted. However, sacred energy was forbidden, and only training weapons were allowed. The match would last a maximum of 10 minutes with Suan acting as the referee. Ron just stood there bragging, which was infuriating. Doma just wanted to rush over and give him a piece of his mind. Doma selected a training weapon for the fight. The moment he channeled his sacred energy into it, the weapon inflated like a balloon. You're not supposed to infuse it with sacred energy. It's a training weapon, so it has a non-damaging property. When you channel sacred energy into it, it inflates and loses that safety effect, becoming incredibly dangerous. Only by maintaining a very specific amount of energy will it stop from inflating. Himo quickly warned Doma. Doma decided it was safer to just use a wooden sword since it couldn't be infused with sacred energy. After the weapons were chosen, the two teams Doma and Himo and Rayun and Jongshuk took their ready positions. On the signal, both sides charged in a chaotic clash, neither giving an inch. Ron planned to take on Doma while leaving Himo for Dongshuk, but Doma and Himo unexpectedly switched opponents, leaving their rivals stunned for a few seconds. It turned out Himo had prearranged a plan with Doma to switch targets on his signal. Ron stubbornly chased after Doma, but was moving so fast he couldn't stop, slamming right into his own teammate Dongshuk. The two refused to give up and charged in again, only to be thoroughly beaten and knocked flat on their faces by Doma and Himo. Ron was fuming and cursing but stubbornly refused to quit, and he and Dongshuk pressed forward once more. The two fought with a sudden burst of adrenaline, their fighting spirits blazing. Seeing their tight coordination, Doma thought like a true hunter and devised a new strategy: take out just one of them to break their teamwork. Himo felt Doma's plan made perfect sense. The two teams immediately jumped into the fray. They clashed with such ferocity that Suan, watching from the sidelines, was left completely speechless. Ran closed in on Doma, swinging his bat to attack, but Doma, a skilled hunter in his own right, swiftly parried the blow with his own formidable weapon. Over here, Himo and Dongshuk were still fiercely trading blows. While dodging Himo's relentless attacks, Dongshuk told himself he had to stop her weapon by matching its speed. But just as Dongshuk thought he had caught it, Himo cunningly swung it aside, leaving Dongshuk grasping at air. She fought with a mix of feints and tricks, forcing him to run himself ragged to evade her skull-crushing club. While Ron, a fighter with near-immortal endurance, was fending off Doma, Himo secretly charged at Ron from behind, stunning him as he was ganged up on. "What the hell? Why are you two so obsessed with getting revenge on me?" Ron shouted in frustration, but Doma didn't answer, busy launching a sneak attack from behind. Just then, Dongshuk rushed in just in time to provide obvious backup for Ron. He counterattacked Doma while trying to chase away Himo, who was darting around. He was utterly exhausted. First Himo, then Doma, both relentlessly targeting Ron. Enraged and as if possessing incredible regeneration, Ron gathered all his strength and sent Doma flying with a single punch. The fun and games were over. Doma was furious. He immediately channeled his sacred power into his staff, causing it to expand as he aimed to smash it right in Ron's face. But unfortunately for him, it had no effect, as any power infused with killing intent would be nullified. The mocking smile just beginning to form on Ron's lips froze the moment Himo slammed her club down on him from above. Himo's club deftly landed a single clean strike straight to Ron's face, sending him crashing face first onto the stone floor. Dongshuk, who was nearby, suffered the same fate at Himo's hands. Doma stood stunned for a moment, then remembering he was supposed to be the strongest, he aggressively charged back into the fray like a raging monster to assist Himo. As Suan watched this chaotic scene from the sidelines, a voice echoed in his ear. Shouldn't you be resting when you have free time instead of engaging in these antics? Back in the courtyard, Doma was tripped by Dongshuk and fell flat on his back. Ron seized the opportunity, gleefully swinging his club down for a finishing blow, but missed again as Suan had pulled Doma back just in time. Furious at being denied his hit, Ron was fuming at Suan for interfering. When Suan suggested they postpone the fight, both Doma and Rayon absolutely refused. The two grew agitated again, about to charge at each other once more, when Taesu's appearance cut them off. "There's a campaign for an eager hunter team like you. Stop this now," Taesu said coldly. Seeing Taesu, the group hastily stood at attention and greeted him. Their previous eagerness for battle vanished without a trace. "This is an urgent investigation. The team will consist of you 5, Taesu continued. Seeing them immediately start squabbling over the commander position, Taesu spoke sternly. Anyone who fights over it will be disqualified, which left them all dumbfounded. Taesu decided the commander would be Suan precisely because he dislikes fighting. Hearing this, Doma and Ron reluctantly agreed, and the situation seemed to calm down. Taesu then pulled Suan aside to discuss the campaign. Before leaving, he didn't forget to remind the group not to fight anymore. Suan was a little worried, hoping this campaign wouldn't be anything too difficult or unusual. "We've already lost contact with 2 teams along that same route, and the point of contact loss is getting closer to us. Based on their speed, that monster horde seems larger than usual," Taesu said, wanting the team to investigate what was happening. After outlining the route, Taesu decided to entrust Suan with full responsibility. The next morning, Doma bid farewell early and set off. Seeing the teacher and students' affectionate farewell, Ron burst out laughing in mockery, but Doma couldn't care less. Suan, along with Jongshuk and Himo, had also arrived. Suan demanded everyone be silent and follow his orders as he was the leader. Meanwhile, Doma and Ron were bickering non-stop, making the atmosphere quite noisy. With everyone gathered, the group eagerly set out. The horde of monsters in the forest had already gathered into 7 groups, preparing to advance before dawn on the darkest night. The monster Barris, after advancing deep inside, had handed over command duties, tasking his blue monster minion with moving slowly and breaking through the human city walls. Suan's group was rushing into the forest at full speed. After a flash of lightning, Ron spotted a group of monsters in that direction about 30 minutes away. Hearing their numbers were less than 100, Suan, though still uncertain if these were the monsters they were looking for, didn't want to act immediately. "What we need is to figure out what's going on. Let's keep observing until nightfall and we'll decide then," Suan suggested. Late that night, the group forwent sleep, hiding among the tree branches to secretly observe the monster horde, but they still didn't detect anything unusual. Doma and Jongshuk were impatient, wondering why they didn't just take them out, but Suan believed they were no ordinary threat as 2 units had already been defeated. Waiting any longer was pointless, so Suan decided to take a gamble and try to take them down. Doma and Ron promised to provide backup to help defeat them. "If there's a powerful monster, I won't be able to take them all down and we'll just have to focus on defeating it. If this mission becomes unstable, we will retreat," Suan said. The group quickly pulled back to prepare for the upcoming battle. Suan then approached Doma, revealing he had a favor to ask. Suan wanted to borrow Doma's blood essence. A mass of Doma's blood flowed towards the sleeping monster horde, tearing up the earth and trees around them. "I need to aim for the vital points. If I'm lucky, I can inflict a fatal wound on the stronger monsters, bypassing any potential for regeneration," Suan thought, as tendrils of blood under his control shot towards the monsters like thorny bushes, wiping them out in an instant. The rest of the group seized the opportunity to rush in, and after fulfilling his duty of supplying blood, Doma gleefully broke his own arm, forming it into a sword, and joined his comrades in battle, his body already showing signs of regeneration. Who would have thought that by the time they arrived, the monsters had already been sent to meet their maker? There was no need for them to even lift a finger. The monster Barris, who seemed almost immortal, and his minion had advanced deep into the forest but hadn't encountered a single hunter because of the city wall. In order to draw the hunter squads out, Barris and his monster minion roared and stomped the ground thunderously. This sound agitated other nearby monsters who heard it, causing them to quickly rally together, forming a massive-scale offensive. Inside the city walls, 2 hunters on watch dozing off were jolted awake by the chaotic sounds from outside. Discovering the signal for reinforcements was broken, they panicked and tried to call for help, but it was already too late. The sturdy wall suddenly collapsed, burying them both deep beneath the rubble. Barris was using a demonic art to both destroy the area and incite the others. The monsters charged forward, destroying everything in sight. The horde of monsters surged ahead in a chaotic frenzy. Every single monster looked incredibly bloodthirsty. They impaled people, demolished buildings, and their shrieks and roars turned the place into a living hell. Just as they were excitedly savoring the feeling of being the predators hunting humans, a lone hunter appeared crashing their party. The enraged monster pack gave chase only to be ambushed by other monster hunters swooping in, their eyes burning with a desire for revenge. Shockingly, in less than a second, the lead hunter was taken down by a level 2 awakened monster. It ripped off his arm and drank his blood on the spot in agony. The remaining hunters were also surrounded, their faces pale with terror. And just like that, the entire hunter squad was brutally massacred in a bloody mess. When Suan's team learned the other hunter party had failed, they were furious. They deduced that the monster horde, after wiping out 2 hunter teams, was deliberately continuing on its original path to set a trap, aiming to draw their attention. Suan heaved a long, weary sigh. He knew this mission would not be easy. The Demon King Ban in his cave had received a report that Barris had breached the city wall and that the new hunter team had fallen for the bait. He immediately summoned Bados for an audience. Bados, carrying a bloody demon head, was stopped by a subordinate for daring to approach Lord Ban without wearing a cloak. Ignoring the subordinate's nonsense, Bados insolently strode inside, dripping blood. "I apologize for this sudden appearance. I will continue his mission," Bados announced, holding up Bane's head. "Do you have any idea how much I needed Bane, just as I need Bados?" "Then why did you kill him?" Ban demanded with a glare. "He was all brawn, my lord. I am certain I can replace him. And for proof I am kneeling before you with his head completely unharmed," Bados stated confidently. This brazen attitude from Bados greatly pleased Ban, who finally entrusted him with the mission. Since Bados was nameless, Ban decided to give him the name Zop. Emboldened, the monsters rampaged throughout the city, filled with the sounds of people screaming for help. Piercing cries created a chaotic cacophony. Fresh blood flooded every street and alley. Human corpses were piled high, waiting to be devoured by the monster horde. If you weren't careful on the streets, they'd casually rip off your arm for sport. The monsters were leisurely enjoying a buffet of human flesh when suddenly a slicing sound rang out. In the blink of an eye, their heads were severed from their necks and their bodies sliced in two. It turned out the teams of Jong-gu and Taesu had arrived just in time to begin their revenge. They were somewhat disappointed as the city wall had obstructed their view until now. Before Jong-gu now were all level 2 awakened monsters. They were clearly targeting the monster hunter squads while using civilians as bait. "Lead the squad and stop these monsters. I will hold off the awakened ones. I really thought I could lure them to one spot to make the rescue simpler." Jong-gu spoke up. Taesu immediately charged forward, rallying his squad. "Let's begin the attack and start the rescue for the safety of the citizens." The monsters started to pursue them but were stopped by their demon king, who ordered, "Attack Jong-gu first, then continue the march." Jong-gu was slightly disappointed as he wanted to deal with the ones chasing the other hunters. Hearing the command, the horde of monsters swarmed forward, intending to overwhelm Jong-gu, but he scattered them all. "This is surely going to be a long fight. I need to conserve my energy. I'll use my speed and technique for this," Jong-gu thought to himself while swinging his sword. The demons relentlessly pressed their attack on Gu, but his ferocious whirlwind slashes annihilated them all. After a grueling struggle, one legendarily tough monster remained standing, seemingly immortal, with its incredible regeneration keeping it in the fight. Seeing the sword in Jong-gu's hand, it immediately recognized him as the white fox that Ban had mentioned and began to laugh maniacally. "So it's a named monster. And there are still second-stage awakened monsters lurking nearby. I bet I'll have to use the 7-branched sword form." Chu thought nervously. "I will let you know my name is Ronov. I will bring your head back to Lord Ban." Ronov roared and charged straight at Jong-gu. Chu could now only rely on his 7-branched sword. On the other side, the 2 half-demon monsters Jope and Bane were arguing loudly about what to do next. "We will sow the seeds to reclaim our honor after centuries. And to watch over it, we need to dig something as large as a mountain." Bane spoke up. Rot wondered if doing something of that scale would attract the attention of the monster hunter teams, but was immediately yelled at by Bathtin. "That's why we have to draw their attention to Lord Barris. What I'm worried about is that you can't do it. That's why Bakbados was chosen for it. I can't understand why Lord B spared you and gave you a mission. Because Lord Ban realized that the one who could defeat someone so strong must possess even greater power." Jope moved his limbs, creating a massive aura of sharp energy, he replied with a smirk. A single forceful stomp from Jope made the earth tremble, shattering rocks and causing a deafening explosion that echoed to the heavens. Bathtin was utterly astonished, unable to believe a half-demon could possess such immense power. "Because I am a monster," Jope said with a grimace. The most powerful monster was approaching the territory, making Suan's group anxious to set out for revenge and confront them immediately. Conversely, Xian-an didn't want to go because he knew there were only 5 of them, and no matter how strong they were, it wasn't enough to turn the tide. "From the beginning, we were simply forced to make a choice. However, As soon as we came here to investigate, our attention was diverted back to the territory. It's as if they're telling us to go back. Doesn't that mean they have the upper hand? Then they're just toying with us. Humans, right? Even if a monster acts according to its instincts, is it really necessary to accept this after everything that has happened? If I'm guessing correctly, their main group is still advancing on our territory just to lure us here. And once their main group breaches the city walls, the entire patrol force will return to defend it. Then the question is, why are they gathering us at one point? They must want to hide something, and they're trying to conceal it because that object would be very conspicuous from a distance. Swan explained with a smile while drawing a diagram. Seeing his comrades still, couldn't understand why they didn't do this in their own territory. Suan added that it's because the thing they need, possibly a source of incredible regeneration, cannot be. If that weren't the case, there would be no reason for them to go to all this trouble. That's what we need to find out. We are the last lines of sight for the Monster Hunter Corps. In short, if we exclude our territory, and the monster territory, then the place we are in is the only one left. We just have to try and find anything suspicious. Just leave the base defense to the other Monster Hunter units. We'll do what we need to do. Chuayan affirmed forcefully. After hearing this, the group fired up with the spirit of an immortal hunter, immediately shot off towards their destination. They flew on, and it was probably nearing sunset. Since Doma could use his full power, like Tesu, Suan decided to entrust the combat unit to Doma. Ahead, a faint glimmer of light made Rao Onion think they were close, and he became extremely excited. His competitive spirit against Doma flared up. Ron immediately channeled his energy, accelerated, and shot forward with the speed of a true hunter, so fast that no one could stop him. What in the world is that? How can it be visible from the horizon? If it's made of holy energy, it must be incredibly dangerous, right? Chewie thought with a start. The whole group rushed to follow that reckless Rawan, who was always getting into trouble. The half-demons on this side began to enter Bothin's domain. The horde of monsters filed through the new spatial zone, gaping at the vast expanse within the mountain. One monster noticed Rap wasn't wearing a cloak and shrieked in anger. Lord Ban bestowed a name upon him, and because of that, he no longer needs to wear a cloak. Bothin explained on his behalf, which made the other monster a bit suspicious. It couldn't understand why B would rely on a mere half-demon. Ban Bados had already departed on another of Ban's missions after creating this chaos. Instantly, the monsters split up to sow the seeds that would supposedly grant them an immortal existence. Bothin also produced a massive oversized seed and tossed it toward the portal. A flash of crackling thunder made Bothian jolt, as if suddenly remembering something. The reckless Ron, having run ahead, stumbled upon a monster busy planting its seeds. The four of them locked eyes and tension flared. Just as Ron yelled, demanding to know what the foul monster was planting, it immediately cried out, "Bane, get over here!" Bane heard the call and paused thoughtfully. She was about to go deal with Ron, but was stopped by Bothin, who knew that a professional monster hunter rarely works alone. Bane felt they had the advantage, as Ron had rashly sent a signal warning the other hunter team to converge on their location. Thanks to him, we can prepare our defenses. We just need to wait for them all to arrive. I already have a plan for our revenge. Bane's eyes narrowed as she muttered to herself. The monster kept calling, but with no response from Bane, it had no choice but to try and protect the seeds it had just planted. Seeing Ron eagerly cast a spell to destroy the seeds, the monster turned purple with rage and lunged forward to retaliate. Suddenly, Bane's voice came from behind, ordering it to simply defend itself and leave a trail. She would handle the rest. Bane firmly assured her subordinate that there were other members of the hunter squad, probably on their way. But if the plan went accordingly, a monster hunter shouldn't even be here, the creature wondered. Exactly? Because we won't give them time to investigate. They'll have to return to defend their own territory. But the fact that a few are here means they've figured out our plan. If we leave a trail, the other hunter members will find this place. But I don't know what abilities they possess. And if even one of them dies, the rest will retreat. That's why we must erase their existence in a single sweep, Bothi said with a smirk. Through her mirror, she had already seen the arrival of the hunter squad, and she quickly ordered her minions to get into position. Her eyes widened when she realized the approaching hunter party numbered as many as 5 members. Bothian went on high alert, preparing to spring the trap to welcome the visitors. Meanwhile, Ron relentlessly unleashed bolts of lightning, causing the monster to howl in agony as its body was scorched black. It was so enraged it could spit blood, but remembering Bothian's orders, it had to grit its teeth and endure. Just then, Doma and Zhangshuk appeared simultaneously, forming a 3-pronged sword attack to execute the demonic horde. Following Bothian's instructions, the monsters counterattacked while defending their remarkable regeneration, making it difficult for the hunter team to see the pit. The large monster, witnessing this epic clash, grew weary and tried to leave, only to be forced by Bane to stay and guard the seeds. What a cruel twist of fate. The more Ron's team fought, the more they were hopelessly pushed back. Noticing a few demons in the rear trying to stack something protectively, Dongshuk powered up and unleashed a fiery blast, piercing right through the monster horde. Ron couldn't get a clear look at what the hell they were trying to plant down there. Meanwhile, Doma was relentlessly pummeling the demons, exhausting them to their limits. They had no escape route as he had them completely cornered. Something crashed down from above with a thunderous boom, sending dust and debris flying. It turned out to be Himo and Suan, the final two fiends, making their appearance. Jupe recalled Bothin's words, and seeing the final two had arrived, he revealed himself in an attempt to disorient the group of hunters. Job wasn't going to join the battle, but was instead searching for someone according to Bothin's instructions. Suan's group hesitated upon seeing Zoe, who had a human-like appearance, despite being a— Suddenly Suan charged in from behind, rallying the entire team. "Take them down!" A few thoughts flashed through his mind. We can't afford to be distracted. Stopping this is more important than figuring out the reason behind it. We must divert their attention and hide the requested jewel right here. The very moment Suyan dropped the jewel, Bothin realized the person she was searching for was none other than Suan, the very one who had ruined her plan for revenge. The Demon King observed the scene before him and wondered, what should I do now? He was torn between two options. He couldn't decide whether to protect the seeds or simply observe. However, the little black hole demon beside him said, "Just stay put." This command angered him slightly. He then yelled at the creature, "Hey, you damn mutt, can't you see the situation?" He thought that if they just fled and abandoned the seeds before them, someone would seize the opportunity to attack. Hearing this, the black hole demon suggested, "You just need to protect us right here." The purple demon king, once again annoyed by its words, cursed, "You damn half-breed." With that, he instantly shot forward, but not without leaving a complaint. The more you explain, the more annoying this gets. The Demon King sped off at a speed that couldn't be underestimated. Just then, something started running parallel to him. He stopped abruptly and realized the person beside him was his own comrade. He quickly asked, "What's going on?" "Where did that bastard go?" the other replied. "This is surely part of the plan. Let's focus on our task." At hearing that, he quickly resumed his chase. By now, Suan could see that the Demon King had caught up to him. "They've caught me." The moment the thought crossed his mind, the Demon King spotted him. "So it was you the one who discovered my plan." Instantly, he turned back and prepared to attack him. A surge of blood-red power was unleashed from his body. This energy shot straight toward Bo's henchman. Then something appeared out of nowhere. It turned out to be the purple Demon King, whose body seemed immortal as he blocked Suan's attack to rescue Bo's henchman. That monster then said to Suan, "You'll have to face me." Suddenly, a snake appeared on the henchman's hand. He lamented, "Oh, you poor snake." He placed his hand on the snake and silently chanted, "Become a dragon." Instantly, the tiny snake transformed into a massive dragon, known as the Spatial Dragon God. Seeing the situation was unfavorable, Suan quickly turned and fled. Seeing this, the Demon King hastily gave chase and yelled for his comrade to stop him. "It seems he's targeting the seeds of regeneration." His comrade heard this and asked in astonishment, "What the seeds?" At that moment, Suan reached Doma and called out, "Doma, please." Hearing his name called, Doma turned his head and exclaimed in confusion, "Huh?" But things were just about to get interesting. Just then, the purple demon lord caught up. The monster was astonished by what he saw and cried out, "What is this? It's not a seed!" And back with Suyan. He grabbed Doma's hand and muttered the incantation for level 6 possession connection. Instantly, a power as thick as blood appeared, but this time it was even larger. Fueled by a burning desire for revenge, Suyan roared, "Kill them all!" Just then, a purple demon lord attacked Doma, but he quickly dodged the blow. In that same instant, Suyan landed a strike right on the monster's neck, aiming to stop its terrifying regeneration. Next, he dashed past the other purple demon lords. Instantly, something like red blood wrapped around them, causing them to scream in terror. "What is this?" As they struggled to break free, the substance dragged them backward, and then a loud crash echoed. Another purple demon lord, witnessing this, cursed angrily. "All you monster hunter types have such troublesome abilities, fighting as if you're immortal." Suddenly, something shattered the Crimson Tide and rescued them. They quickly escaped and chattered amongst themselves. "Damn it, we missed our target. We were aiming for Bothin." At that moment, Doma's group charged toward Bon's subordinate. He was the one the purple demon lords called Bothin. Without a trace of fear, this man softly called out, "Space Dragon." His eyes opened and dragon scales grew around them. A handful of sharp claws appeared along with his declaration, "I will choose this place." As soon as he finished speaking, a surge of dark power emerged. This power stopped Doma's group in their tracks. Himo cried out in alarm. What is this? Suyan yelled in confusion. My legs, something suddenly happened. It turned out the purple demon lords were discussing BUSSIN's ability. Was that BUSSIN's doing, that crafty bastard? I never thought he could pull something like this off. Suddenly, BUSSIN's voice rang out. Open the gate. Instantly something appeared above Doma's group, forcing them to look up. It was a strange circle that had appeared out of nowhere. The sight caused a stir among everyone. Sensing the danger, Doma shouted for John. He immediately replied, I know. Right after, he charged forward with John providing cover. Suyan himself also felt that something was wrong. He began to think about how he had to leave an anchor seed here somehow. Disguise it as a bloodstain, he thought, quickly releasing his power. I'll leave an anchor seed. Back with Doma, he was now unleashing a powerful sword slash and shouting, Die! John also threw a mighty punch. Himo swung his spear, delivering a formidable slash. 3 different sources of power rushed toward BUSSIN. Unafraid, he quickly countered, Devour it. As he spoke, something descended, swallowing the 3 powers heading for him. At the same time, it also pressed down on Doma, and even Suyan couldn't escape this fate. Himo was also pinned down, unable to do anything. The courtyard suddenly became completely empty without a single soul in sight. After executing this technique, BUSSIN himself was panting heavily with exhaustion. Then he muttered to himself, This should be enough. He looked at the empty space before him, convinced that no trace was left behind. Returning to Doma's group, the unfamiliar scenery before them was disorienting. What is this? Where are we? We're not dead, are we? John wondered in a daze. This must be the power of a god. What in the world is this? Dongshuk wondered, unsure of BUSSIN's identity. A monster in strange clothes. Is he also disguised as a human? Ho thought, uncertain. But what is that? Besides us, those purple demon kings were trapped along with us too. They stared at the scene before them, a dawning realization on their faces. Don't tell me this is... Just then, Swan noticed something. It was a cracked seed lying discarded on the ground. This enraged him and he cursed aloud. Damn it, I failed in the end. His words made Ho wonder. Failed, huh? He then explained why. I was going to hide the reinforcement seed there, but I couldn't manage it in the end. The monster hunter army won't be able to find us. However, John interjected, Don't worry, we'll get back and inform them. He then turned to Dongshuk. You still remember the location, right? Doma, of course, replied with a bewildered look. Even if we could go back, the problem is, where are we? At that very moment, a voice echoed, You must be wondering where you are. A Shatawat figure emerged from the darkness, revealing, This is a place created by the White Fox. Hearing this, the purple demon king muttered, I see, so it's here. Meanwhile, another was unfamiliar with the name. The White Fox. Suddenly, BUSSIN asked, You must be familiar with the name Chu, right? Doma's group, of course, recognized the name. Teacher Chu? Next, he expressed his admiration. Isn't it amazing? With power that isn't even divine, a single human created an island like this. Hearing this, Betos thought in astonishment. A single person. BUSSIN then declared sinisterly, You will all die in this place created by the White Fox. Hearing this, John scoffed, How annoying. Himo angrily challenged, You think you can kill us here? Doma laughed like a maniac. I'd like to see you try. The purple demon king suddenly asked BUSSIN for permission. May I kill them now? Of course, BUSSIN didn't object. Yes, I apologize for so crudely asking your intentions in such a sudden situation. From now on, I will simply observe without interfering. Hearing this, the other purple demon kings cheered with delight. It's fine, this is great. You're pretty quick on the uptake after all. The purple demon kings were excitedly chattering with BUSSIN, completely unaware that Suan was observing them. If you hadn't apologized, I might have killed you already. Suan was in utter turmoil. We're finished, he thought. Still, he tried to reassure himself. I tried to leave the reinforcement seed, but I failed. But think, even if we can't get out of here, the monster hunter army can still find the hole. As if reading his mind, BUSSIN immediately spoke, shattering his hopes. I'll deal with that reinforcement seed long before you get your revenge on them. His statement sent a jolt of panic through Suan. While no one was paying attention, the dragon seed began a sudden regeneration. A gasp of surprise echoed. A stranger's smug voice wondered aloud, Now how should I handle this? Suddenly from a black hole, seeds began to fall. And the stranger who suddenly appeared was none other than BUSSIN. He flashed a savage grin and asked, Did you think an immortal being like me couldn't sense divine power? His words made Suan grind his teeth in fury. Despite his rage, he continued nonchalantly, Because I'm just a half-breed, I may not emit divine power myself, but if I were possessed by a god, I'll be able to sense even the slightest trace of divine power. Since they're releasing it in a straight line to show the way, finding them is that much easier. After saying this, he smirked, Thanks for your kindness. His words left Suan furious, yet powerless, cursing inwardly. Damn it! Bane spoke up, stating, "We don't care about the outcome of this war." A portal opened in front of him. As he stepped through, he added, "We just take what we want." Before disappearing, he left them with one final remark. "I'll watch you all die in the place the White Fox created." Suyan's mind raced in turmoil. What do I do now? The leather beads I carefully scattered along the way are now useless. I even buried them underground just in case, but I never imagined a monster would have the ability to sense divine power. Anxious thoughts swirled in his head. He wanted to flee and warn the monster hunter army. But the problem is, this is an island created by Mr. Chu. Even if I could somehow defeat them and escape the island, I have no way of crossing the vast ocean. He was extremely wary of BUSSIN, and above all, we cannot get away from him. His mere presence is trapping us here. His fists clenched as he came to a realization that means the only option left is to fight. His eyes blazed with determination. Suyan gazed at the purple demon lords before him, strategizing. We can somehow manage that monster horde, but the real problem is those other demons in human form. Their incredible regeneration makes them a nightmare for any hunter. He then glanced at Rob and realized the source of the immense power they'd sensed on the horizon was definitely him. The enemies before him filled his heart with despair. There was no chance of winning. Just then, BUSSIN appeared, transformed into a small black hole imp. He approached Bados and warned, "From now on you are never to try and find me." He also added that if you do try to find me, you'll realize I'm not here and you will flee. Bados heard this and asked, "Where are you going?" Bane answered truthfully, "I'm going to survey the situation and report to the Lord." This prompted Bados to ask his next question. "Will it all be over if we just kill the hunter squad here?" Bane clarified. "No, kill all of their underlings too. It's true that wiping out the existence of the monster hunter team will end the plan, but if any of those guys are left alive, it will only cause a stir internally." After hearing this, Bados remarked, "I think I see now why the Lord keeps you by his side." Bane retorted, "And why did the Lord acknowledge you?" Then he commanded, "Prove it to me again." Rob Bados declared in a booming voice, "Of course I will prove it." At that moment, another voice called out, "There's nothing left to worry about, is there?" The purple demon lords immediately replied, "Yeah, from now on, all we have to do is kill. Let's get started." One of the purple demon lords suddenly roared, "All of you get out of here! Don't even think about interfering in our fight, you damned half-breeds." A contemptuous smile spread across Do's face. This was the moment of revenge he had been waiting for. This enraged the purple demon lord, who demanded, "What the hell are you laughing at?" He wasn't the least bit intimidated by these purple demon lords and openly mocked them, knowing he was practically immortal compared to them. It's hilarious how creatures like you, who are nothing without your borrowed power, try to act all high and mighty when your leader is away. An angry monster snarled back, "Oh, is that so? You want me to describe the taste of a damned half-breed like you?" Just then another one stepped in to stop the two from brawling. "Hold on, let's deal with the monster hunter team first." The one who had just argued with Rose Song, still fuming, said, "After hearing that you're still going to talk like that," but the other one tried to persuade his comrade, "You can do whatever you want after we kill these soldiers. If the mission is completed, even Ban won't make a big deal about the life of a half-breed." With that, his comrade listened to his friend and quickly departed. "See you later!" The half-breed shot back without fear. "Yeah, see you later!" Suddenly an exclamation rang out. "This is so frustrating." Doma asked irritably, "How long are you all going to stand around? Aren't we going to start?" Hearing this, Himo chimed in. "Now," Dongshuk answered hesitantly. "Ah well, I was just wondering to myself. Damn it, this isn't my fault things got so bad, is it?" He then turned to ask Suyan, "By the way, Suan, do you have any ideas?" Seeing that he didn't answer, he continued to call out to Suyan. Annoyed by his constant chatter, Himo angrily growled, "Hey, shut up, Suyan is thinking." And so an argument erupted, with one loudly demanding, "How many more times do I have to ask if we just keep standing here? And that monster horde will make the first move." Himo, not one to back down, cursed back, "I told you not to be so impatient." Seeing them bicker, Dongshuk also stuck his nose in. Hey, stop it. We shouldn't be fighting amongst ourselves." The three of them argued, completely oblivious. Doma's face darkened, helpless against their bickering. The argument raged on. John loudly insisted that no, she was just being unreasonable. Himo shot back, "What did I even do?" Just at that moment, something happened that startled the three bickering hunters into silence. The purple fiend kings looked up bewildered, only to see that Doma had unleashed his power. He roared at his friends, "Even with that monster horde right in front of us, you're all still just spouting nonsense." Seeing him like this, Suyan exclaimed in shock, "Doma!" Even one of the fiends stuttered in amazement, "That guy?" Doma unleashed a slash forward, declaring, "I'm so frustrated I could just die." His attack, fueled by a desire for revenge, shot towards the purple fiend kings. Among them, one monster muttered in a daze while another screamed in terror, "This is dangerous, get out of the way." Hearing this warning, the others snapped out of their stupor and quickly dodged. At that moment, their seemingly immortal leader casually lifted his leg, calmly waiting as the slash flew toward him. He then blocked Doma's slash with his leg, letting out a great roar as he kicked the attack, sending it flying back. He then planted his foot back on the ground even though a huge chunk of his soul had been gouged out. He suddenly let out a contemptuous scoff as if the wound was nothing thanks to his powerful regeneration. On Doma's side, he was still scolding his friends. "Why do you have to overthink things so much?" "Just kill them all," John shouted back. "Do you think we don't already know that?" "We're holding back because there might be a better way," Dongshuk then said gently. "Doma, I understand how you feel." Suddenly, Suyeon placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Of course I know that's the best way." Doma then let out a breath and uttered, "Just think about killing." His words made Suyeon ask blankly, "What?" Doma continued to insist, "Stop thinking about this and that. Just focus on the slaughter." He slowly approached his friends and asked them, "Have you ever thought about nothing but the kill?" Suyeon hesitantly answered, "I haven't." Doma declared firmly, "We'll find out the answers once we win. For now, nothing. All we have to do is kill right." Hearing those words, Himo enthusiastically agreed and high-fived Doma. "Oh, I agree too." John, however, angrily shouted, "Who do you think you are to order me around?" Son didn't hesitate to follow Doma's words. "Sure, I'll give it a try." Hearing this, Dongshuk was shocked and asked, "Really?" Swan replied blankly, "Actually, nothing comes to mind, but when I think about killing, I feel like my mind starts to work." Hearing that, Himo suddenly hit Doma and said with excitement, "I can finally move properly." Her words made Shuyan click his tongue and reply, "Thanks." Then he declared with determination, "Then let's do it." The wind blew across the sky as Ba Thin stood high above, looking down at the monster-filled chaos below. He muttered, "The white fox." Just then something appeared. Two people were sent flying a considerable distance. A person holding a sword appeared and silently assessed their enemy. "He's stronger than I thought." The Demon King laughed loudly and issued a challenge. "What's wrong? You think you can kill me, an immortal being with this pathetic amount of strength?" Hearing this, Changgu silently speculated, "He's clearly trying to make me use more power openly, probably to exhaust me." Just then, something flew up, catching his attention. Ronov and his allied monsters charged towards Changgu, roaring loudly, "Everyone kill the white fox." Seeing this, Changgu silently devised a plan for his revenge. "Even if I wipe everything out, I'm still conserving my strength because I don't know what will happen next. That's why I held back, but in the end it's just delaying the inevitable." He muttered to himself, "Then it's time for me to reveal my true form." He and the horde of monsters all froze, not understanding what was happening as the light grew brighter and brighter. Sunlight suddenly appeared and the monsters, unable to dodge in time, began to disintegrate. They screamed in agony before vanishing in front of Changgu. Seeing this, the one named Ronov was startled and quickly slammed his axe into the ground for cover. The surrounding monsters shrieked as if they were witnessing hell itself. Beams of light that slipped past the axe seared parts of Ronov's skin, burning him faster than his regeneration could keep up. He screamed in terror. The demon Barris realized something. He turned towards the light and said, "He's here." His face grew worried, recognizing the one who had just appeared, the mortal who turns night into day. In the darkness, sunlight suddenly radiated, growing ever larger. Ronov collapsed to the ground, panting heavily from exhaustion. His face, slick with sweat, contorted as he cursed. "Damn it, a powerhouse like that shows up before we can even weaken the White Fox's power." Seeing the help arrive, Changgu's face became smug and he let out a laugh. "He's here." He looked towards a man flying in the sky, the one emitting all the sunlight. "What the hell are you doing here all by yourself?" A man suddenly appeared, stomping forward. It was the sun god in the guise of an old man, battalion commander Kim John. "Did you think you were the only strong one in the monster hunter army? And why are you holding back your full power?" he said, walking forward to scold Changgu. Unafraid, he replied as if this was a familiar routine. "I heard Lai Sun was summoned by the elders. I thought the others had gone too," the old man said angrily. "What, those old hags? Damn it, they really are something else." The two of them talked as if they'd forgotten about the horde of monsters still surrounding them. They charged one after another, intending to kill the old man. "3 monster creatures have already closed in on me while I'm still just rolling up my sleeves and talking. Anyway, I think we should consider ourselves lucky it's not any worse than this." Suddenly, he shouted, "Oh, and remember to properly discipline your disciple. Am I supposed to endure insults from a mere brat?" As he spoke, he unleashed a sun-like radiance from his body, causing the approaching monster creatures to instantly disintegrate into dust. The two of them seemed to ignore the screaming monsters, continuing their conversation as if to show the creatures they were no match for them. "What insults?" Jong-gu replied. The old man approached, still scolding. Shouldn't he at least respect his elders, right, and be polite too? As he walked, he flicked a beam of light from his hand, striking the barely living monster behind him. He is not permitted to engage in behavior that undermines the system. Jong-gu laughed awkwardly in response. "Ha ha ha, I'll be more mindful." He thought to himself, "I thought I was doing a good job since Lai Sun didn't say anything. But was I wrong?" Elder Chu suddenly called out his name. "We need to quickly secure the origin point of this incident." "Yes," he replied, "it's time to reveal my true form." Jong-gu's body began to transform, snow-white fur spreading up from his arm. With a roar, his entire body instantly changed shape. 9 foxtails appeared in a burst of light that shook the ground. The one named Lanov saw this, his face filled with fear and anxiety, his voice trembling. "A white fox! He's that strong!" The battalion commander and Gu, their faces furious, yelled out, "Make sure to annihilate every last demon living here, a fitting revenge for their trespasses." "Yes, sir." The scene shifts to a desolate mountain region at midnight, where a group of monsters were talking amongst themselves. "That guy, wasn't he already taken down?" "What?" another one replied. "He blocked the full force of a flying kick attack. On top of that, the sign of a second awakening appearing on his body is just absurd." "You must be mistaken, an awakening in a half-breed, but it's definitely," another one interrupted him, "it's definitely some kind of divine half-breed. Those types do all sorts of strange things." They continued walking and talking in the darkness. "Is that so?" "Because those who only possess divine powers are nothing special. Let's just kill them after this is all over." The other one replied, "All right, maybe I saw it wrong." Elsewhere, Doma and his teammates were in discussion. Xian thought, "A lizard's tail. The human-mimicking demon behind them is probably a half-breed." Shocked and surprised, Zhang and the others replied in unison. "A half-breed?" Doma asked, confused. "A half-breed? What do you mean?" Suan continued. "I heard about it from Tesu." "The human-mimicking demon is a half-breed born between a human and a demon," Dion stammered, trembling. "Oh, so in other words, half of them are human." Suan continued, asking Doma, "Do you know anything about the weaknesses of a body with such powerful regeneration? That thing could kill you. So don't worry about it." Doma suddenly cut Suan off. "My master is Chu, a man who seems almost immortal," he told Suan with a calm expression. "Always so reliable," he replied. Suddenly, a bizarre black spike-like object shot straight toward the main character and his comrades at breakneck speed. The group of hunters quickly dodged to either side of its path. At that very moment, a mob of weapon-wielding monster creatures charged out from nowhere, shouting, "Don't hold back, kill them all." Meanwhile, after dodging the monster attack, Doma and his team quickly assumed a battle-ready stance. Swan shouted, "Get into formation, from now on we're splitting into 2 groups." Zhangshuk and Jian moved together as usual. They began charging toward the horde of monsters. Zhangshuk and Jian declared in unison, "All right, we'll make it crystal clear that you're not the only ones who've grown stronger." "Doma!" Swan yelled, calling for him. "Not this again?" He shot Suyan an annoyed look. Doma could fight with everything he had. It turned out he was just being encouraged. Doma glanced back at him, grinning. Gripping the greatsword in his hand, he charged at the monsters, roaring, "I'll kill every last one of them." From behind, Suan said in a strained voice, "Himo, are we to conserve our energy and do nothing?" She responded. Just then, 2 Westerners armed with weapons also hurried forward. As he ran, Suan said, "Trust me, just preserving our full strength sets us apart from them. Besides, when Doma fights a monster, there's no way he'll get injured." He didn't forget to remind Himo, "Provide minimal support so you don't interfere with Doma's fight." "Got it," she responded. Suan walked on, thinking worriedly. "Yeah, fighting a regular monster is no problem. The issue is the hybrids." But thankfully the hybrids aren't joining the fight. He's probably just a reckless fool drunk on his own power. He finally concluded, "For now, let's conserve our strength." Over where Doma was, a series of crescent-shaped red energy blades of power he generated shot toward the monsters. The monsters dodged just in time as one of the lesser demons yelled, "What the hell is that? Who uses their power so recklessly?" His comrade shot back, "I told you that bastard's movements are bizarre." As the barrage of energy blades continued, the monsters managed to evade every single one. One of them spoke up, still watching him fire so wildly. "He seems to be a hunter with immense power." The monster leader issued an order to its underlings. "An attack of that magnitude must have a cooldown. Stay on him and don't let him use that terrifying power again." It began to build momentum, roaring, I'll kill him myself. You all follow behind me. With that, it and Doma charged head-on at each other without a moment's hesitation. Suddenly in the monster's eyes, Doma's face morphed into that of Master Chogu. He changed direction with blinding speed, creating an afterimage that the monster couldn't react to. In that instant, Doma appeared directly behind the demon with a chillingly sharp gaze. He struck so fast the monster didn't even perceive the attack. His blade had already passed through the monster's neck. He said coldly, "From now on, your nickname is Crazy Bastard Who Wants to Die." As he spoke, his blade sliced clean through the monster's neck, severing its head from its body. The monster's two comrades witnessed the whole thing and screamed. The other one quickly responded, "Get back!" The power radiating from Doma's sword forced them to back away cautiously. The two monsters halted, questioning each other. Damn it, wasn't he just some brute with a lot of power? There's a hunter like this here already. At Doma's feet, the monster's severed head was still trying to curse him. "You bastard! Cough!" Before it could finish, he swiftly thrust the tip of his blade straight through the monster's throat. With a cold expression, he stared at its dying face. "Shut up, you crazy bastard!" Himo, standing nearby, yelled in terror, "The blood, hurry and clean it up!" From behind, Suan began absorbing the monster's blood through his palm. He silently thought, "I never imagined it would be like this. I need to rethink this." Beside him, John asked his fellow hunter, "Did you guys kill that monster already?" Dongshuk angrily shouted, "Don't look away!" At that moment, someone was staring down at them from above. It was the one named Babados. He was an interesting fellow. Down below, the two monsters, after witnessing their comrade get taken down, were plotting their revenge. "What are you planning to do? Shouldn't we cooperate to deal with that hunter first?" Doma suddenly shouted, interrupting their conversation. "You wretched demons!" The two monsters flinched in surprise. He continued to taunt them. "Where's that fighting spirit from before? Surely you're not frozen in fear, are you? Don't be scared, come at me!" Hearing his condescending words, the monster glared, its eyes burning with a desire for revenge. The two charged forward as if to tear the hunter apart instantly. "Don't provoke me, you human. I'll kill you and rip you into 100 pieces." Doma, completely unafraid, laughed as he rushed toward the two. "That's the spirit? Let's cast aside all thoughts and fight to the death." With a whoosh, one monster raised its sword and dashed toward Doma. It leaped up, intending to slash straight down on his head. Fortunately, he quickly ducked, dodging the monster's attack. At that very moment, Dongshuk rushed in, using his back as a launch pad. He leaped up, his fist engulfed in flames, preparing to punch the monster straight on. Just then, his power exploded, knocking the monster far away. John, seeing an opportunity, quickly used his power to charge toward the monster that had just been knocked back, much to Dongshuk's surprise. "Where are you going?" John replied. "I should also kill it quickly." He swiftly ran to the staggering monster, wielding a warhammer forged from lightning. "Doma already killed one," he yelled at the other monster. Suddenly, the other monster appeared behind him, startling him. It roared, "You said you'd kill me!" It laughed smugly, thinking it could kill him, and said, "I'll put a hole in your head instead." Seeing his friend in danger, Dongshuk immediately rushed over and activated his power. Level 6 Divine Possession. The monster, before it could strike, saw him approaching, and a look of panic flashed across its face. Once again, Dongshuk channeled power into his fist and struck the monster directly. It managed to react, raising its blade to block his attack. However, his power was still strong enough to send the monster flying back toward its comrade. The two demons, knocked back by his blow, now stood together. The monster, despite just being hit, grinned smugly, its wounds already showing signs of regeneration, and said to the other, "Heh, one of those hunters is a fool, so this will be over quickly." After knocking the monster away, Dongshuk turned back and scolded him. "What are you doing? You're being too impatient." John, with a scowl, argued back, "Doma already killed one. You know that." "Doma?" Dongshuk asked, puzzled. John continued, "At this rate, I'm going to lose to him. I need to boost my power too." Dongshuk snapped back, "No." Surprised, John asked, "Why do we need to conserve our strength? Don't you realize our real opponent is a hybrid monster that might be practically immortal?" John pondered and replied, "I know, but..." Dongshuk reassured him, "Stay calm. Just keep doing what you're doing now." Hey, he explained, "Don't be impatient, we have a long way to go. You can get your revenge on Doma later." He realized his mistake and said, "My apologies." After speaking with him, Dongshuk's expression turned serious, said with a furious expression, "I'll settle this right now." The scene shifts to Himo and Suan. The two were now rushing toward Doma. While running, Himo wondered, even if we support him as much as we can, shouldn't we be leveling up too? "We're up against a second awakened monster, you know," Suan explained to her. "No, this will be enough. Even if a direct confrontation is impossible, we can still block the opponent's attacks. She asked, still doubtful. But is that even possible? We've been observing him this whole time, right? Suan replied, I didn't expect this level of activity either. His expression grew tense as he thought. I thought he was from another world, judging by his seemingly immortal strength and his ability to wield divine power. I never imagined he also possessed Jogu's skills. Slowly, the efforts Doma has been making are improving his odds of victory. Over where the monster that Doma was currently charging at was located, it placed a black circular crown-like object on its head with a stoic expression. Doma, completely unaware, kept rushing forward. As Suan was running, he suddenly froze as if realizing something terrible. He screamed at everyone around him, "Run!" The ground beneath them began to erupt. Dirt and rocks flew everywhere. Doma hastily leaped high into the air, dodging the monster's attack. It also leaped up, closing in on him. The chaos below was so distracting that Doma didn't realize the monster was already right in front of him. It lunged, thinking triumphantly it had the kill, and sneered, "Farewell, redhead." But it was never going to be that easy. Doma twisted his body for momentum, swinging his sword back as he prepared to finish it. Just try it. The blade in his hand swung down, smashing the monster straight into the ground and creating a colossal impact. Worried, Suan unleashed his power as he called out Doma's name. Doma, diving toward the spot where the monster had been struck, answered his call. Amazing. He charged down triumphantly to find the monster, only to be caught off guard by a mysterious purple energy rushing toward him. Doma quickly shifted his stance and raised his blade, beginning to channel power into the sword. Damn it! His superpower erupted, clashing with the stream of dark magic. While the two were locked in combat, Himo and Suan, witnessing it all, rushed toward the spot where the monster had been slammed down. But they never expected it to suddenly charge out of the dust, coming right at them to attack. It leaped into the air, brandishing its weapon, and roared in anger, "I'll kill these gnats first." Just then, a fearless Himo used her own blade to smash the monster's weapon down into the ground, startling it. It thought with tension, "What is this? What is this strange sensation?" Himo didn't let up, and continued to press her attack, trading blows relentlessly. They were evenly matched, one attacking and the other parrying as the monster thought. At the peak of the impact, the trajectory is automatically. A stream of red blood, Suan's superpower, erupted from below, striking the monster and making it flinch. However, it dodged with ease, retorting arrogantly, "Such a useless attack." Himo and Suan used its momentary distraction to quickly retreat to a safer distance. It didn't understand, yelling after them, "Where do you think you're going?" And then with a boom, Doma crashed down from the sky. He looked up and grinned at the monster. "Don't get distracted. Come at me. This hunter will kill every last one of you." Hearing his contempt, the monster furiously roared, "How dare you underestimate us so much with our powers of regeneration? Our revenge is inevitable." Those humans? Just then, a one-legged monster appeared, running up to him and saying, "No need to raise the temperature. Just use this." The short-horned monster shot back, "What am I supposed to do when I'm this furious?" The one-legged creature leaped up, unleashing dark magic, and declared, "I'll kill that redhead first." The other began to curse as he charged toward Doma, a man clearly bent on revenge. He ran toward the two monsters, effortlessly slashing through all the dark magic from the one-legged creature. The monster below lunged at him, swinging a blade, and roared in anger, "I'll slice him into tiny pieces." Doma, the skilled hunter, replied with disdain, "Slice me into tiny pieces, is that all you've got?" How crude. The two clashed, trying to land a strike on each other. The monster heard this and cursed, "You damn bastard." The magic user watched them fight, thinking to himself, "Damn it, he's blocking our attacks too easily. He's impossible to deal with. We can't land a single blow on him." And he realized something wasn't right. Wait a minute, easily. But why hasn't he inflicted any real damage on us yet? He looked at Doma's gloating smile. "Don't tell me that bastard is, perhaps he's an immortal." Realizing the trick, he rushed toward his comrade, yelling, "Get away!" The other monster replied, confused, "What?" With a grave expression, he screamed, "Get away from him. That bastard is just feigning a struggle while gathering his divine power." However, Doma was already in front of the other monster, his face breaking into a chillingly dark smile as he said, "Too late." He brought down his blade with immense power, aiming straight for the short-horned monster. The other one saw there was no escape. He used his ability, trying to block the devastating attack from reaching his comrade. Suddenly, he looked over and saw his comrade about to be sliced in two by Doma's power. The monster cried out in agony. Doma laughed heartily and said, "Keep it up. If you two don't stop this, you'll both be cut in half." Bull. He taunted the two monsters as he poured more power into his attack. "Try harder. Try harder." The monster, being cut, gritted his teeth, relying on his regeneration to— "Damn it, you bastard, we made a huge mistake." The other one cursed back at him. "Shut your mouth." He roared even louder, "Get out of the way!" And then to the other's astonishment, kicked his comrade far away. The short-horned monster, confused, said, If you do that, the balance?" The other monster replied, "It doesn't matter if one of us lets go, we're both going to die anyway." The moment he finished speaking, Doma's power sliced through them both, severing one of the monsters completely. Doma burst out laughing mockingly. "Ah ha 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 ha! From now on, your nickname is Halfie. Ha ha!" The short-horned monster stared as his comrade's limbs were scattered everywhere. He struggled to his feet, wondering how the life he had fought so hard to survive could end like this. "I can't die like this." He glanced over at his other comrades who were busy fighting the summoned beasts and thought, "Damn it, they're in no position to help me." He staggered forward, clutching his gut in fury. This shouldn't be happening. Why are we struggling against just one person? In front of him, Doma advanced, his body radiating a dangerous bright red aura of power. Doma taunted him as he walked. "From this moment forward, your nickname is Half and Half." Suddenly, a figure appeared behind the monster. It was Bedos. He crossed his arms, looking down on the monster with contempt, and said, "Well, what do we have here? Didn't you say see you later? But look at you now." Seeing Bedos, the wounded monster spoke with irritation. "This damn half-breed, what is he staring at? Can't you see the situation you're in?" Bedos calmly replied to the monster, "Actually, a certain immortal noble demon told me not to interfere in that battle." Hearing this, the monster's jaw dropped in astonishment. Just then, Bedos' expression hardened as he stared intently at the monster. It suddenly ground its teeth, and after a moment its face twisted as it reluctantly began to plead with him. "I sincerely apologize for my previous rudeness. Please give me another chance. An opportunity only comes once." Hearing this, Bedos replied, his expression still nonchalant. "But let's just see what kind of request that noble demon makes." Seeing Bedos' response, the monster bit down so hard its gums bled. It must have been seething with rage. But it couldn't maintain that attitude for long before the monster slumped dejectedly and said, "I humbly request a bit of time. Please just grant me a little more time." But Bedos remained indifferent to the monster's words, refusing to listen. He gave a contemptuous smirk. By now the monster was furious. Its face contorted in fury and it screamed wildly, "How dare you mock me? You filthy half-breed, don't you realize how important this is?" The moment the monster finished screaming, Bedos lunged forward and delivered a brutal kick to its face, sending blood splattering everywhere. The monster collapsed to its knees on the ground. Bedos stood over it, still in the stance from his attack. He spoke calmly, "That was close, you can't call him right now." A moment later, as he was about to turn away, a voice suddenly roared out, making Bedos flinch and glance over. "Who the hell do you think you are killing? Whoever you please." It was Doma. He stood with a group of others, then roared at Bedos. "He's mine, you bastard! This is my revenge, him!" Standing beside him also questioned Bedos. "What about John and Jongshuk?" Meanwhile, the other demon was being engulfed by a massive blaze. It stood motionless within the ring of fire for a moment, before leaping high into the air, laughing as it spoke. "A mere fire attack like this won't be enough to kill me, not with my powerful regeneration." The monster cackled, its eyes fixed on something as it spoke. "No matter how hard you try, it's just fire. I'll kill you first, then deal with that flashy hunter later." The monster furiously charged at Bedos, roaring a curse as it attacked with its own flames. As for Bedos, he took a ready stance on the ground below, a large flame erupting from his clenched fist as he prepared to counterattack. "Excellent. Oh, you finally managed to control your divine power." The scene shifts, fading into the past as a voice echoes. "Well done." The young man sitting there is Dongshuk. He's on the ground laughing as he says, "You finally managed to control your divine power, mata ha ha ha. It's only level 7, just level 7. He said it as if it were some incredible achievement. Watching from a distance was Yoon, the battalion commander. He looked on and calmly told him, "You only feel that way because of the one who came before you." Then, right after battalion commander Yoon finished speaking, John rushed forward from behind Dongshuk, a gleeful expression on his face as he laughed. "Because I'm a genius." Seeing John's smug arrogance, Yoon simply remarked, "You're only half a genius." John immediately stammered in response. What do you mean by that, sir?" "Only half." In contrast to John's baffled expression, Battalion Commander Yoon just spoke calmly. "If you were a true genius, you wouldn't be stuck at the same level waiting for Dongshuk to catch up to you. Don't you think so?" After hearing those remarks, John was thunderstruck. He stood stunned, thinking silently. Does Battalion Commander Yoon no longer consider me a genius? Battalion Commander Yoon continued, "Now that Dongshuk has caught up to you, let's move on to the next level." Dongshuk repeated the phrase as if to himself, "the next level." In contrast to Dongshuk's composed attitude, John was like a child about to go play. He eagerly shouted, "What is it? I'll master it quickly to prove that I am a genius." Battalion Commander Yoon clenched his fist and said, "The next step is divine power." The battalion commander's words seemed quite cryptic, leaving Dong-suk and John completely baffled. Dong-suk simply asked, "What?" But John started with a barrage of 1,000 questions. "What do you mean by divine power? Isn't that the first thing we learned?" "Of course we both know how to do it." The battalion commander's gaze grew more profound as he spoke softly, "Like Doma." Hearing this, Dong-suk and John cried out, looking rather horrified. "No Doma." Hearing the battalion commander, John looked uneasy. He said, "Of course not. Doma can't use divine power, so he relies solely on his monstrous physical strength." Battalion Commander Yoon continued, "There is a saying that the more solid the foundation, the easier it is to build upon a concept similar to a power of regeneration for your skills. No one has built their foundation as diligently as Doma." After a moment's pause, Yoon added, "When Doma escapes his incomplete possession, you won't even be a match for that monster." Hearing this, Dong-suk was silent, but John yelled impossible. John continued to protest that it wouldn't happen. In the end, it's all about ability. Except for Chu, everyone else reached the top using only their talents, right? Battalion Commander Yoon turned his back and began to walk away, but not without answering John's query. Talent alone is not enough, not even for a seemingly immortal master. No one has ever reached the summit using only divine power. Hearing the battalion commander's reply, he was stunned. "What? No way!" Battalion Commander Yoon approached a nearby rock and sat down to rest. Then he continued, "Do you know why everyone admires Chu?" Hearing Yoon, both Dong-suk and John were puzzled. It was Dong-suk who spoke. "It's because he reached the top using only divine power." A moment later, Battalion Commander Yoon pointed to the side and said to them both, "That's right." And that statement can be interpreted another way. Battalion Commander Yoon crossed his legs and continued, "To be able to reach the peak with only divine power, that is what I mean. Do you know of Chu's technique to release divine power in the shape of a crescent moon?" Hearing the battalion commander, John spoke up enthusiastically, "Of course I know. Shaitan. I use it too." Seeing John say this, Dong-suk also added, "More than just knowing about it, I want to experience it for myself to be ready for my revenge." Hearing this, John looked puzzled, and Battalion Commander Yoon calmly began to explain. "Controlling and regulating divine power that scatters freely like a wildfire is an incredibly difficult task. Much like a hunter taming a wild beast, Chu consolidates that divine power into his sword, keeping it contained, and even after that concentrated power is released from the blade, it maintains its sharp form. Even for prodigies like you, that is an incredibly difficult technique, one you might never master in your lifetimes." After hearing Yoon's explanation, Dong-suk asked, "What you just mentioned, does it relate to another person's power?" A battalion commander, Wai-sun, replied, "Of course. You might think the technique I mentioned is executed through divine abilities rather than raw power." Hearing this, Jang-shuk's eyes widened in surprise. Both Dong-suk and John stood silently listening to the battalion commander. To just shoot fire and lightning in a desired direction and change its shape as needed. While this is very difficult with divine power, it's easy enough for all of you to do with divine abilities. After a brief pause, Battalion Commander Yoon continued, "That's why many a hunter has risen to the top relying solely on their innate divine abilities." John suddenly spoke up, "But sir, you just said it's impossible to reach the pinnacle with divine abilities alone." Battalion Commander Yoon replied to John, "That's right, because divine abilities have their limits." As the commander finished, Dong-suk suddenly exclaimed, "Is the next step learning how to break through those limits using divine power?" The battalion commander gave a knowing smirk. Immediately after, Battalion Commander Yoon exclaimed, "Brace yourselves! If divine ability is talent, then divine power is perseverance. This will not be easy." Seeing their determination, both Dong-suk and John shouted in unison, "Yes, sir!" From that moment on, their training to fuse divine ability with divine power began. Back in the present, a horrifying monster dove down from above, roaring a curse, "Shardai in flames!" Below, Jiang Shuk clenched his fist as fire erupted, engulfing his hand. "Thanks for dropping your guard," Dong-suk yelled. "Now die by a god's power." He then immediately thrust his fist toward the monster. A massive torrent of fire shot forward like a cannonball. This made the monster freeze in its tracks, watching in disbelief. A few seconds later, the blazing flames surged forward, piercing through the monster's body and bypassing its famed regeneration, causing its eyes to widen in terror. Its expression filled with bewilderment as its eyes bulged. The monster stammered, "How could something like mere fire?" A moment after the flame tore through its body, it began to plummet to the ground, screaming in agony about its wounds. And then it lay motionless on the ground. In the distance, the figure of Dion charged toward another monster, launching an attack. But it dodged just in time, sending dirt flying everywhere. John glared furiously and roared, "Is this bastard turning its back because it thinks my attacks are useless against its nearly immortal hide?" the other monster shrieked as it fled. The monster was charging at lightning speed toward Trongshuk, intending to strike him down. Seeing this, John unleashed an attack on the monster, saying, "If I wasn't holding back my full power for my revenge." The blast of energy shot from him as he spoke. "Sure, you'd already be dead." The energy blast shot toward the monster, rapidly enveloping its body. At the same time, flames from Trongshuk's attack coiled tightly around the monster's leg. Then Trongshuk punched toward the monster again. He didn't forget to ask, "Did you kill it? Is it dead?" Trongshuk's flaming outstretched hand rushed forward. It spread open to strike the monster, which turned in startled confusion to look at the attack. And then it struck the monster. The flame, along with a blinding flash of light, engulfed the entire area. The monster under assault slowly deformed. It let out a few muffled, unintelligible cries, and then finally it lay still on the ground. Smoke dust and debris filled the air. Every time I use a new power, I'm reminded of how incredible Doma is. After attacking the monster, Jong-seok stood panting heavily. Even channeling power through a divine ability is this difficult. That monster must have had incredible regeneration. How can he make it look so easy? From a distance, Deon-seok saw a figure waving. Don shouted from the other side, "Did you finish off the monster? Did you kill the monster?" "We were supposed to kill him first." Right hearing. This Jong-seok stood there stunned, feeling an itch of annoyance. John excitedly shielded his eyes with his hand, looking all around. "I had to come help when things got serious." His smile didn't last long before he spoke sullenly. "What is this? He already killed it." Then he yelled, "Jong-seok, let's hurry. We can't afford to think we're late." Hearing that, Jong-seok mumbled in agreement, "Yeah," and then he too departed. Although he initially felt a sense of rivalry with Doma, it seems to have gradually turned into envy. Not that I don't understand anyway. Lee Sun suddenly used a power our master said we'd never be able to use in our lifetime, as if to show off to us. If we show Doma, things will be better, and we can also use the power Lee Sun taught us. Jong-seok's gaze was fixed ahead as he thought to himself, "We are also on the path to reaching the peak." Below, Doma strained his neck and yelled, "Who do you think you are, some reckless hunter killing indiscriminately like that? He was mine to kill." "That bastard." Sion stood to the side wondering, "What is this? Am I seeing things?" Himo, standing nearby, also asked with confusion, "What about Don and Deon-seok?" Just then, Doni jumped down, causing Himo to sigh in relief. "Oh, there you are." A red-haired guy shouted, "We also killed ours a little while ago." "So it's a draw." It was a draw, but it seemed Doma wasn't having any of it. He scratched his ear and replied dismissively, "What are you talking about?" From a distance, seeing Jong-seok running over, he urged him on. "What took you so long? You're late." Seeing this, Himo spoke up, "It's not that late, we just finished too." Hearing this, John gave a wry smile and replied, "Ah, so we were faster, right?" With that, he walked over, slung an arm around his shoulder, and laughed heartily. "Jong-seok, we won." This behavior left Jong-seok confused. He muttered, "What?" From afar, Himo's voice echoed back, "You said it was a draw earlier, so John, as excited as a kitty with candy, eagerly declared, "That one's a half-demon, practically immortal with its resilience. You're the last one, I'm going to kill you." Hearing this, the one named Betos exclaimed, "I see, so it's my turn to die." Then he suddenly turned and called out to the red-haired guy, "Is that bastard ignoring me?" while being dragged away by Jong-seok for being too loud. John continuously yelled, "Let me go! I have to kill him. This is my revenge. How dare he ignore me?" Meanwhile, the other guy, after being called Red Hair, froze, muttering the name Red Hair over and over. A moment later, he roared, "Call me by my name is Doma." From a distance, Betos heard this, chuckled and murmured, "Doma!" Sion suddenly flinched, his gaze unconsciously darting elsewhere. That Betos fellow's expression suddenly turned fierce as he said, "My name is R." Hearing this, Doma's attitude shifted to one of excitement. He bent low and charged toward Betos, thinking to himself as he rushed forward, "You're ignoring both my name and my feelings. I will kill you and grant you a new name." Betos just smirked at the sight. He also charged forward to confront Doma with the same question. "Give me a new name?" With that, both Doma and Betos lunged at each other in front of everyone. A voice rang out, "Calm down a bit." Meanwhile, Dong-shuk had Dion in a headlock with his forearm, dragging him away. As they struggled, the two of them shouted, "Hey, why are you not stopping that Doma guy while you are keeping me from my revenge?" Hearing this, Dong-shuk replied, "That is because you are trying to fight while you are too worked up." "Calm down," Suan, who was standing aside, suddenly spoke up. He said, "I am not mistaken. He is using his second awakening." Dong-shuk was shocked to hear this. "What? The second awakening?" How could a half-demon monster possibly achieve a second awakening? Swan turned to face Dongshuk as a stream of red blood flowed from his hand, arching up like a rainbow. He began to explain to Dongshuk, I remember Master Taesu saying that half-demons cannot even activate their first awakening, let alone the second. Hearing this, Himo laughed and asked, so what? We felt uneasy because we thought we were going to kill someone, but now it is better since he has become more of a monster, right? Dongshuk stood from a distance, his arm still locked around Dion's neck to stop him from struggling while he turned to agree with Himo. That is right. There are always exceptions to everything. Hearing Dongshuk agree with her made Himo even more excited. She laughed and said, that is right, just go back and report that there is a half-demon who can also achieve a second awakening. On the other side, Suan was still holding out that bleeding hand of his. The stream of blood seemed to grow, enveloping his body. Suan, the power he possesses is not the ability of a god, but the power of a ring. While he was still contemplating what would happen if that were the case, a wooden plank suddenly smacked him right on the head, stunning Suan. Himo stood with her weapon propped up, speaking directly to Suan. What are you thinking about now, huh? Did you forget we as a proper hunter team decided to only think about killing just as Doma said? Swan rubbed his head after that stinging blow from Himo. I know, he said, but is it not easier when you understand your opponent's power? Just as Suan was speaking, Himo cut in. Yes, you are right. Swan continued. It is just like the difference between how Doma and how we wield the power of the gods. Not all awakened demons are the same. Some might even have insane regeneration. He continued to ramble on. Meanwhile, Himo stood in silence. Dongshuk was still restraining. The three of them stood there dumbfounded, watching Suan's passionate explanation without having the heart to interrupt him. Himo rested her blade on her shoulder as she listened to him say, that awakened demon has a name. Be careful because the power we see from him might be from the ring and his combat style. Then he concluded with one final sentence. In that way, we can face any potential risks even if the enemy seems immortal. At this point, Dongshuk finally released his hold on Dion's neck. He immediately fell to the ground with a thud. All right. As soon as he was free from Dongshuk's grasp, Dion grabbed his weapon and charged forward, valiantly shouting as he went, I will go on ahead. He was like someone who had just chugged an energy drink. This made Dongshuk cry out helplessly. Hey, stop! Himo watched his retreating back as he rushed off, then she spoke up. Then let us go together. Just as Himo was about to leave, Suan grabbed her arm, causing her to turn back instinctively. He said, do not release your power. This took Himo completely by surprise. She turned to Suyeon and asked, to ensure we kill him, we should combine our forces with theirs. As soon as she finished, Himo suddenly had a startling thought. She then asked Suan in a low voice, you're thinking of something else, aren't you? Seeing Himo's question, Suan calmly replied, don't worry, my mind is on the kill just as you said. Hearing this, Himo was silent for a long moment before saying nothing more. She then turned and chased after Onan, calling back to Suan. All right, I get it. Now Suyeon stood alone in the vast space, thinking to himself, we can't kill someone with brute force alone, not without information, especially if our target is a powerful monster with unknown abilities. After a long moment of thought, he finally leaped off the ground. As he flew after the others, he thought we need to understand what kind of being he is, including his seemingly divine abilities. Meanwhile, Bado stared for a long time and thought his movements are incredible. He and Doma were still locked in a fierce battle. Doma, full of fighting spirit, charged in to clash with Bados. Doma's strike tore up the ground, but Bados managed to dodge just in time, looking slightly bewildered by the attack. Bados thought to himself, it's impressive. Even without his powers, his combat prowess is undiminished. It's like the man is immortal with endless regeneration. It's as if they're going all out every single moment. Doma advanced and Bados dodged. As Bados was thinking, don't tell me this bastard is... Doma had already rushed forward, preparing to slash directly at him. The force of the blow was like a whirlwind tearing through the air, but Bados managed to turn and block the fatal slash with his leg. He smirked and said, you're moving with all your strength, aren't you? Hearing this, Doma was baffled. He asked, what? Bados looked up at Doma and said, how can you keep that up for so long? Why aren't you using your immense power like before? Does it take time to charge up? Hearing this, Doma seemed indignant, retorting loudly, if you figured it out, then you figured it out. Why do you need my confirmation? Am I your teacher? While they were busy arguing, a flash of light like lightning struck from the sky, accompanied by a voice, don't ignore me. This made Bados look up at the sky in confusion. Zeon came storming down from above, looking ready to settle a score with Bados. But he still had no idea what was happening and just stood there watching. Immediately after, a barrage of lightning bolts rained down, shattering the ground. Debris flew everywhere. Bados managed to dodge the attacks and retreated to a safe distance. Looking at the torn-up ground, he whispered in awe, "Amazing. That's definitely lightning, but it's holding its shape." He barely had a moment's rest before a blazing red light like fire tore through the air toward him. This was none other than Dongshuk, a hunter bent on revenge. He flew across the ground barefoot. The two of them immediately clashed as if they were mortal enemies from a past life. Bados thought to himself, "It's like a glass shattering. This is completely abnormal. I never knew fighting humans could be this much fun." Dongshuk launched an attack and then landed beside Doma. Dongshuk stood with his arms crossed, laughing heartily. "How is that, Doma?" Hearing him, Doma replied, "Now even when I strike with lightning, I can maintain its form. I see it too, you don't need to confirm every single one." That guy Bados watched them from a distance and thought, "But why aren't the others attacking?" He suddenly grew pensive for a moment. "Don't tell me they're trying to figure it out." He sneered, "It's laughable how they're observing us." A strange monstrous black aura emanated from Doma's feet. Everyone including Doma watched in confusion. Suddenly Bados leaped up. His eyes filled with a hostility as he channeled power into his legs, preparing to attack. Seeing this, Dongshuk shouted a warning to Doma to watch out. He had just finished speaking when a black shadow flashed by like lightning. It grazed Doma's leg and then shot off again. The black shadow continued to streak past where Dongshuk was standing, forcing him to leap high into the air. And then that shadow, fueled by some unholy regeneration, just kept rushing about maniacally. And finally it slammed headfirst into a nearby cliff. The impact was so powerful that a section of the cliff face nearly collapsed. A thick cloud of dust and smoke rose up. It didn't stop there. That black shadow continued its rampage, shattering a chunk of the mountain overhead and causing rocks to tumble down. The three of them, Shuide and Himo, who were hiding under a slab of rock, had the scare of their lives. John exclaimed loudly, "Damn it, that thing scared me." Himo, however, calmly said, "Thank you." Suyon remained unchanged. He clenched his fist on the ground, thinking to himself, "With this, the power we're witnessing must be the ring's strength now amplified." As for Bados, he laughed like a maniac and shouted, "Come on now, what are you going to do? You can't judge me with something like this." As he was speaking, a streak of red energy shot toward his throat, making him flinch involuntarily. And then he reacted quickly, flipping backward to dodge Doma's heaven-sent attack. Doma spun to a halt, smirking as he said, "What a waste, I could have given you a name." The name for the one whose head was severed while showing off his power. Bados, having narrowly escaped death, didn't forget to retort to Doma, "Even though I've displayed such power, you're not flustered at all. That means you've fought someone with this level of strength before." Hearing this, Doma once again put on a weary expression and said to him, "Isn't that obvious? Compared to my master Changgu, you are nothing." At these words, Bados's face suddenly turned serious. He muttered the name Chu over and over, then suddenly a dark figure appeared behind him and spoke to him. "This place was created by a white fox. Ah, you would be familiar with the name Chu, wouldn't you?" Bados returned to his arrogant demeanor. He smirked and said, "The white fox that created this island is your master. I wanted to fight with that white fox and it went well. If I kill you, your master the white fox will surely seek revenge, won't he?" Seeing this, Doma continued, "He'd also be happy if I killed you too, you damn monster." Bados laughed loudly. "Ha ha ha, you don't need to say a thing." His eyes were like those of a demon in a furious rage. He glared at Doma and growled, taunting him. "Didn't you say you were going to kill me and give me a name? Then I'll put my name on the line as well. If you can surprise me, I'll tell you my real name." Hearing him say that, Doma said dismissively, "I'm not curious, you immortal bastard." Bados spoke again with a contemptuous tone. "It doesn't matter. Because I, the hunter, am only offering my name to pass judgment on you." Doma shifted the greatsword on his shoulder, puzzled. "What are you talking about?" he answered in a low voice. "If you die before even hearing my real name, you'll just be a fool who died not even knowing who I am." He replied with excitement, "Then I'll just have to pry that information out of you before I die, right? Your neck will be severed before you even know what's happening." Doma realized something, pausing for a moment in thought before saying, "No, even with a severed neck, they still manage a few last words. It's like they have some minor regeneration." Bados raised an eyebrow, taunting him. "You can try that too unless you plan on defeating me with just that mouth of yours." Doma declared with the confidence of a seasoned hunter, "If you want, I'll tear you apart and kill you." Suddenly, a sound cut through their conversation, drawing his attention. "No!" John landed out of nowhere in front of Doma and said, "He'll be struck down by lightning and die." Immediately after, Dongshuk flew in to continue, "I don't care how you kill him." He, along with Himo and Suan, landed around Doma, aggressively declaring, "Our quest for revenge will end in victory." Bados faced their group without a hint of panic, calmly stating, "Everyone wants to kill me, but is this how it is going to be?" As if sensing the caution from one of them, he hesitated, prompting an impatient question. Who? Dong-suk, standing beside him, was also filled with doubt. Bados looked towards Suan, standing in the back, and answered, "The one in the hoodie, that's you." Suan asked back, puzzled. "Me." Himo seized the opportunity to tease, laughing loudly, "Hoodie guy." Bados looked at him with a serious warning. "You're the one calling the shots, aren't you? Stop analyzing me and just attack with everything you've got. You have a chance to win, right?" Suan simply replied calmly, "I have no intention of doing that until I figure out the nature of your godlike power." He frowned in confusion, saying, "What's all this? Is that the only reason I can just tell you if you want?" Suan eyed him with suspicion. Bados denied it. "I don't have a godlike ability." Himo angrily shouted at him. "You're joking. We heard everything from Taesunim. A monster like a demon hybrid can't awaken their demonic ring and use a god's power." Suan remained silent in the back, thinking. Bados retorted, "Isn't that a strange thing for you to say?" "Because I am using the awakened power of my ring." Himo was left speechless, only able to stammer in response. He stood there, casually revealing it without any hesitation. "Before you, we had a special case who awakened his ring but couldn't use a god's power. Do you believe me now?" Suan replied, "I've also never heard of a demon who could use both." His eyes were still filled with suspicion as he continued, "But I can't trust anything you say." Bados put his hands on his hips and asked Suan, "If you don't use all your strength, you'll die one by one. Are you prepared for that?" Suan asserted. "That won't happen. I know what kind of person you are." Bados asked, annoyed, "Someone like me?" Frowning as Suan continued, "The kind who gets strong just to show off." Doma's group stood before him, confident that their revenge was already assured. Suan continued his lecture. "People like you become arrogant and end up getting beaten to a pulp. You'll be forced to go all out, and at that moment we as the Hunter Party will finish this with everything we have." Bados chuckled contemptuously. "You speak as if you know." Suan didn't deny it, simply replying, "Of course you have no intention of landing a fatal blow on your opponent. You're just trying to dominate them with all your might, aren't you?" Seeing his intentions laid bare, he gritted his teeth in anger, silently listening as Suan continued. "It's as if you want to hear us say you're so strong." Suan, paying no mind to Bados's mood, continued his taunts. "How desperate for validation must you be to seek it from your enemies?" Suan concluded with a scornful remark, "It's proof that your entire life is just a reflection of your insecurities and self-doubt." As soon as the words left his mouth, Bados lunged straight for Suan, attacking to the astonishment of everyone around them. Himo reacted instantly, her eyes flashing, as she swiftly moved in to block his kick. Bados's attack was deflected by Himo's surprise counter. Suan watched him, thinking to himself, "I thought he was provoking me, but these are just warning shots." He couldn't help but silently assess, "Are you saying you can't control the rage of the monster within? What a pity." Bados sneered, "Let's just see what happens." Seizing the moment while he was distracted, Dion rushed in from the side to join the fray. His hammer was about to smash into Bados's knee, but unexpectedly Bados leaped backward with incredible speed, dodging the attack. Bados slid to a stop, maintaining distance from Doma's group. He began to seriously concentrate a dark power at his feet. Jongshuk started to charge forward, opening his mouth to speak. "Blood!" But an arm quickly grabbed his shoulder, holding him back. Bados kicked the mass of black energy toward the group. Doma gripped his greatsword tightly, slashing forward. The massive blade unleashed a wave of light, splitting the dark energy in two. Bados watched in astonishment as a blade of light rushed toward him. He leaned aside just in the nick of time, narrowly evading the attack. Bados surveyed the devastation, silently marveling at this skilled hunter team. "That one is incredible. Just by compressing his power, he could split that massive energy." He watched Doma with excitement, certain he could do something similar with the power of his ring. Dark thoughts filled Bados's mind as he plotted his own revenge. After this battle, "I will make all of their skills my own." Dion charged toward Bados again with his hammer. "Don't get distracted by a little thunder." In the blink of an eye, Bados teleported to Dion's side, aiming a kick at his head and saying, "Wouldn't your leader go berserk if one of you died?" But Dion was not so easily defeated, appearing almost immortal in his resolve. A flash of lightning erupted, easily neutralizing Bados's attack. At the same time, Zeon asked, "Who's going to die?" "Me." Bados glared at him, replying angrily, "Are you trying to brag that you're faster than me, curly hair?" Orbs of light began to appear surrounding them. Zeon replied seriously, "As a level 7, I have every right to boast," and in a fleeting moment vanished from Bados's sight. Bados scanned his surroundings warily, knowing a foe with potential regeneration couldn't be underestimated. Dozens of lightning bolts quickly encircled him. Zeon skillfully weaved between them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. His hammer crashed down and Bados began to counter with his own power. He drew a circle on the ground with his foot. Before the bolts of lightning could reach him, Bados managed to erect a black barrier to protect himself. The barrier successfully blocked the barrage of lightning aimed at him. John stood to the side observing the situation before him. He once again used his power to form a sphere of lightning. John shouted as he hurled the sphere toward Bados. It was a special bolt of lightning that contained the power of a god. It flew towards him, piercing through the thick smoke. A massive source of energy crashed down amidst John's shout. Suddenly, Bados appeared behind him out of nowhere, raising his leg to attack as he said, "You're quick to dodge but slow to attack." The kick aimed straight for John's head descended and he wondered, how contradictory. A loud crash echoed out. Jung-suk had swiftly rushed in to block the blow with his enhanced arm. However, he couldn't help but scream in pain. While Bados was distracted, a blade lunged straight for his neck. Bados sensed the danger and immediately ducked to dodge the attack. He leaped into the air, spinning to deliver a kick toward Doma. Instantly, one of Doma's arms was severed by the seemingly immortal Bados. It was so easy that he himself couldn't believe it. Surprisingly, the young hunter Doma ignored the pain, his mind set on revenge as he aggressively raised the sword in his hand and charged at Bados. He shouted in anger, "You're trying everything to land a fatal blow." Doma remembered what Suan had once said. The lizard-tail lords will use the body of regeneration. Enraged, he powerfully swung his sword at the monster before him, letting out a curse. Damn it. Bados, off balance in mid-air, could only raise his hands in front of his face to defend himself. The blade came down, directly shattering his two bracelets. Doma's expression at this moment was utterly terrifying. After that last slash, Bados quickly created distance by jumping back while Doma just stood there silently. He was struck with fear, thinking the body of regeneration. Jung-suk, seeing the opportunity slip away, couldn't help but say with regret, "What a waste." That was our chance to land a fatal blow. Beside him, John gritted his teeth and cursed, "Damn it, damn it." Jung-suk suddenly turned to look at Doma, who was standing there pensively. He called out, "Doma, are you okay, Doma?" Jung-suk's voice caught Suan's attention. He was startled to hear Doma's name and thought to himself, Doma? A vast power was continuously surging from his body, causing Suan to fall into deep thought. He wondered, a god on a towering mountain. Maniacal laughter echoed everywhere. Doma was leaping and flying about amidst the tense battle. He said excitedly, "It doesn't hurt at all, not even a little bit. To think moving while possessed would be this easy." John watched Doma's erratic behavior and said helplessly, "Has Doma finally gone insane?" Jung-suk, no better off, was filled with questions and asked, "Don't tell me he's been completely possessed by the god, has he?" Suan turned to look at him flying about behind them and calmly replied, "Not yet. We haven't yet witnessed the god's advent." He raised his voice to explain, "Doma, it seems he's currently on the borderline between incomplete and complete possession." Doma landed, halting his movements. Suan continued, "So the painful side effect of the incomplete possession has disappeared." He continued, "And the power of the god." As soon as the words left his mouth, a colossal energy erupted from Doma's body. To the astonishment of the two onlookers, Suan calmly explained, "There are no barriers holding it back. This is the stage where it can be used flawlessly." Jung-suk spoke seriously to the person frozen beside him. Lunim said that the power of God is perseverance. He gazed at the immense power before him and couldn't help but wonder, how much more must I do to reach that realm? Doma, thrilled with his current power, exclaimed, "This is it. So this is what it means to wield the power of a god." He gripped his blade, charging forward and excitedly declaring, "The power of God I've used up until now." Doma charged straight at Bados with his immense power, saying, "Was something I could barely manage." Bados watched in surprise, unable to believe what was happening, and wondered, what the hell just happened? Bados spread his arms as if to embrace this deadly power. He excitedly mused to himself, "It's far greater than the power I saw before." In a flash, Bados ducked and dashed forward, narrowly avoiding the attack. He roared, "Did it take you all that time just to build up that much power?" Just like that, the colossal blade flew right past him. The mountain behind him exploded from the impact. Bados, like a true monster stimulated by the chaos, rushed madly toward Doma, spouting strange words. "Have you ever knelt before your god? Or are you praying now?" Watching a barrage of sharp blades rain down, he shouted in awe, "This is incredible!" One by one, the blades descended, creating massive explosions where Bados stood. Doma floated in the air, laughing with delight. "This is so much fun, I want to slice everything apart." While Doma let his guard down, something materialized beside him. With a single blow, it sent him flying as the others watched from below, a testament to the monster's impossible regeneration. Himo called out a warning. "Hey, you seem a little too excited for your own good." Jung-suk shouted to the others, "Let's move. Doma will be fine, but before they could leave, Swan manipulated the red liquid behind him, blocking their path. He advised, "Don't go, it's probably best not to interfere right now." Himo questioned him. "Don't go." Jungsuk was also skeptical. "Doma has joined the fight and our power has increased. Shouldn't we seize this opportunity?" Swan patiently explained his reasoning to them both. "We need to acclimate to this new power. If we jump in now, we could actually be a hindrance. As for Doma, he needs to grow through this battle." Swan lowered his head, lost in thought as he shattered his bracelet. He could have reached the front lines through solo training alone to achieve full possession, but it seems something was still missing. Then he opened his eyes silently, affirming, right now he needs to get closer to God. Himo asked suspiciously, "Be honest with me, are you only thinking about killing?" Swan replied softly, "No." She rested her blade on the ground, not looking surprised, and said, "I knew it." He calmly stood his ground and explained, "To be honest, it was initially a suicide mission." He started, but Himo cut him off without listening. "If possible, let me get some fighting in before you change." Swan somberly continued with his own train of thought. "Even if I don't want to, I'll have to do it very soon. We can kill that hybrid monster and relay the information to the Monster Hunter team. We can do this. We're going to win right now, so just trust me," Himo replied with a cryptic expression. "Of course, I trust you. Why would you even ask?" Dongshuk added. "You're the leader of this squad. We'll follow you, so don't worry." She asked calmly, "So what's the plan?" Amidst the thick dust and smoke, Swan replied softly, "I can't tell you yet. I'll explain when the time is right. So for now, just trust me and follow my lead." Dongshuk agreed. "All right." Himo, on the other hand, just silently sized him up. Back in the battle, a gust of wind tore past, leaving only a sharp sound in its wake. A crack appeared on the massive wall. Beidou slammed Doma against it, cackling madly. "You've become astonishingly stronger in an instant, an almost immortal body of regeneration." He sighed in annoyance. "Why does every monster know about my regeneration but then forget my name?" The monster replied mockingly, "Perhaps it's because of the rare pleasure of meeting me." Suddenly, Doma asked a question that made him freeze. "Do you also eat humans?" His weak spot struck. Beidou furiously stomped on both of Doma's arms, crushing them. Seizing the opportunity, Doma quickly leaped away from his grasp, his arms slowly undergoing regeneration. Beidou watched him cautiously, thinking in awe, "Incredible. I've heard about this regeneration ability, but seeing it firsthand is completely different from the rumors." He leaped down from the cliff, answering Doma, "That's not why I'm pleased. It's because I've met someone who like me is both human and not." Doma slowly removed his outer coat and asked, "Are you sure about that?" "You're a half-human, half-monster, but I was born among humans, wasn't I?" He replied with excitement. "No, it's true you're different from me, but you're all the same." Doma calmly transformed his arm into a blade, listening in silence as Beidou rambled on. What if the body with regeneration was born among humans but had the appearance of a monster? What if there was a hybrid of a monster and a human that looked just like a monster? He madly clung to his own reasoning. "We are the proof that there's no difference between humans and monsters." Holding the blade, Doma casually cut through Beidou's delusion. "It seems you're getting tired. Judging by how lost you are in your own thoughts." Doma swung a clean slash straight at him, confidently declaring his path of revenge to simply kill every last monster. In a flash, Beidou appeared above him, preparing to bring his foot down. He shouted, "Unfortunately for you, you don't have what it takes to achieve that wish." Doma swiftly dodged to the side. Beidou's landing shattered the ground beneath him. He shot Doma a contemptuous, taunting look. "I've heard that the weakness of a body with regeneration is its human part." Beidou charged again, aiming for his weak spot, saying, "While for other beings with regeneration, destroying the head leads to instant death." Doma used his greatsword to block the kick. The two forces collided, creating a shockwave. Beidou was thrown back, yet he continued to needle him about his weaknesses. "They say if you destroy the spine, the regeneration kicks in, but the body is paralyzed, isn't that right?" He declared confidently, "The weakness that can kill you is me." The hunter Doma scoffed in reply, powerfully swinging the blade enveloped in energy. "You think I'd be scared of something like that?" Another massive surge of energy was released. Facing it, Beidou's dot remained unfazed, raising his leg as he condensed his dark energy. He said grimly. Without hesitation, he brought his foot down on the blade and roared, "How about this?" Beidou poured his strength into his foot, not forgetting to add, "I acknowledge your power and skill." That single kick was somehow able to completely shatter Doma's technique. Beidou paused, then looked up at him and continued smugly, "It's not enough to test my body imbued with the ring's power with that dull blade of yours." Upon hearing Beidou's words, Doma suddenly fell into deep thought. Dull. It was a word Doma had almost forgotten. He recalled memories from the past. Back then, Doma was cheerfully raising his hands in excitement after completing a mission, saying, "Done, done, done, Chu." Standing nearby watched him in amazement and thought, "Is this for real? It's too fast even for accelerated learning." Then he smiled with satisfaction, appraising Doma. "So this is what happens when a genius practices with their full strength." Chu praised him aloud. "Well done, Doma." He shyly scratched his head and replied with a smile, "Thank you. I'll keep at it once I get the hang of it." He slowly drew his weapon from its sheath and asked him, "Can you wait a moment before that? Tell me what you plan to do next." Doma looked at Chu in surprise and answered, "Is there something else?" A single slash shot out from his master, effortlessly slicing a sturdy mountain in two. Chu turned to him and asked, "What do you think? You can feel the difference between what I did and what you did, right?" Doma's jaw dropped in astonishment as he replied, "Yes, it's very clear." Chu looked at the now split mountain and gently explained, "As you can see, even with an equal amount of power, the sharper one has a greater effect. A small difference can yield enormous results. From now on, let's strive to perfect ourselves even further." He replied enthusiastically and clearly, "Yes, sir." Back in the present, a self-reminder became crystal clear in Doma's subconscious. He must not forget the words his master taught him. "I can do it now." Gripping his weapon tightly, immense energy began to radiate from him. Doma told himself, "It's not about forcing power, but about extending it according to my will." An endless source of energy enveloped him. Doma silently affirmed to himself, "Become sharper." As a dedicated hunter, Doma muttered in his head the way to deal with this monster. "The sheer size of my divine power is useless. Focus on honing it even if it has to be condensed." Just then, Bados charged at him again, yelling, "What are you doing? Are you going to fight or not, Doma?" As soon as the words left his mouth, he attacked. Meanwhile, Doma was still concentrating. A second later, he opened his eyes, an irritated thought crossing his mind, "Sharper." Immediately after, Doma sliced that darkness in two. Not stopping there, Bados attacked him again, asking in confusion, "What's going on? Your attacks have become more focused, but you know you can't stop my near-immortal body at this level." However, what he didn't expect was for Doma to attack him from above, and then he swiftly landed a slash on Bados. Fueled by his need for revenge, Doma then handily landed a few more slashes to teach him some manners. After seeing him no longer fighting back, he landed on the ground. However, from within the thick smoke and dust, he leaped out to attack again, his incredible regeneration having already healed him, but his strike missed. Next, Bados taunted him, "No way has your god abandoned you. Why are you so weak?" Just as he finished speaking, he was nearly struck by another slash which he barely managed to dodge. However, Doma, like a relentless hunter, didn't stop. He was continuously attacking him. On the other hand, in the midst of the fight, he was thinking to himself, his inability to react to pain is even more dangerous than his regeneration. The man doesn't even seem to be paralyzed. He's just accepting it because it has surpassed his threshold for pain. The more I fight you, the stranger you seem. A moment later, Doma was knocked back some distance by Bados, but he wasn't discouraged in the slightest, once again rushing toward Bados. Meanwhile, the other man told him to come to his senses and make the most of the extended time. In this situation, all you can do is protect your head and your life. As soon as he finished speaking, Doma, with a mix of surprise and confusion, managed to land a slash on Bados. Following up with a decisive cry, Doma also slashed at his neck and then for good measure landed several more blows on his body. But Bados just laughed loudly and said, "How interesting. A guy who relies solely on brute strength can actually pull a few tricks." The next second, he kicked him away. However, to his surprise, Doma had also managed to slice his leg, causing Bados to cry out in pain. A second later, he staggered back a few steps. Only then did he feel his foot bleeding, looking down and thinking to himself, "Blood." However, he said cheerfully, "Oh my, don't tell me." And right after that, not making him wait long, Doma charged at him again. And then after uttering, "How miraculous," Bados used his leg to kick off Doma's arm. But he was astonished when Doma quickly caught his own severed arm and sword before they hit the ground. Then with a resolute shout, he used the sword to slash directly at him. Next, he was utterly surprised when Bados managed to dodge his attack. In addition, he taunted him, "Don't underestimate me just because I rely on the strength of my legs. I have fangs and claws too." Then, a series of surprises occurred as Doma moved with incredible speed, slapped him across the face and said, "Did you forget that I survive by draining preservation abilities? I'm not just some monster you can kick around." And he didn't stop there. Doma slapped him again, then kicked him away, sending Bados flying back and screaming in pain. In a flash, his attitude changed and he laughed, saying, "How very interesting. In that case, I'm even more curious to see how you near-immortal fiend, fight without a sword." As soon as he finished speaking, he moved swiftly toward him. On the other side, Doma's arm had already finished reattaching. And so he decided to use his fists, shouting, "Shut your mouth! Do you think I'm here for your amusement? This is about revenge." But then with a kick from Bados, he injured Doma's arm and leg once more. Right at that moment, Doma suddenly remembered something and muttered, "Ah, that's right. I forgot to channel the divine power into my bones." Bados also mocked him, "You're pretty agile when it comes to dodging, even if you try to channel divine power into a mere mortal body." As he said this, he rushed in to attack him from behind. And while Doma braced himself to block the blow, Bados swung his leg out and said, "You're nothing more than someone to be crushed beneath my power." A second later, Bados kicked Doma, sending him flying backward. He crashed into a clef face, kicking up a cloud of dust and smoke. At that very moment, as he quickly analyzed his opponent's techniques, he thought to himself, "You call this a normal human body? I thought my arm was about to be torn right off. Am I not even worthy of being considered an opponent? Damn it." Meanwhile, the arrogant Bados said, "Hurry up and come out, Doma. Don't tell me you're already dead." After hearing him say this, he became so enraged that he gritted his teeth. Immediately after, to Bados' utter astonishment and surprise, Doma let out a resolute cry and swung his sword powerfully towards him, causing Bados to hastily leap away, wondering. The sound was followed by a feeling of immense shock. But upon seeing the fissure Doma had created, he laughed and said, "Huh, so that's Doma for you." Next, he charged out from the cliff face. As he ran, Doma reflected that today's lesson was about predicting movement. The more combat experience you have, the better you can predict and move in anticipation of an attack's direction. This is a simple technique that utilizes this principle. Although its effectiveness diminishes with repeated use against the same opponent, if applied at the right moment, it can even make an afterimage seem real. If you can make the opponent see this afterimage, turning the next attack into a decisive blow will have a tremendous effect. At that moment, as soon as the determined hunter closed in on him, he let out a sharp cry and swiftly swung his blade once more. Doma's swordsmanship was so powerful that Bados had to scream in pain. Moreover, the aftershock impacted the cliff face behind him, and then it sliced a mountain peak clean off. Rocks began to fall incessantly from the summit. Meanwhile, where Bados stood, blood dripped and stained the ground. However, with one hand covering the wound on his neck, his uncanny regeneration already starting to close the gash, he could still laugh cheerfully and say, "I really thought I was a goner, you son of a bitch." Meanwhile, Doma shouted in anger, "What a waste! I wanted to hear your real name from your severed, rolling head." The next second he stood up and replied, "So I've lost the bet about revealing my name." At this, Doma relentlessly urged him on, "Spit it out, you bastard! Don't tell me you're pretending not to be surprised." Then Bados quickly threw off his coat and replied, "Don't rush me. I'll tell you my real name is..." At that moment, a hazy memory suddenly flashed before his eyes. A young boy with blue hair was speaking. "You have blue hair too? You're the first person I've seen with it besides myself. Then you can do this too. My name is Leah, named after this flower. Then we can call you Lobel. Lobello." So after recalling that memory, he hesitantly replied, "My name is Lobel." As he said this, he suddenly clutched the circlet on his head. Darkness enveloped Bados' mind like a thick curtain. He began to recall memories of his childhood, the origin of his quest for revenge. Bados recounted in a slightly sorrowful tone, he didn't have many memories of his childhood. When he was just a child sitting alone and lonely in a dilapidated, crumbling room, an innocent boy who still knew nothing of this world, he would just wave his hands in the air playing by himself. He only remembered being all alone in that room. The living conditions there were far too squalid for a child's development. They passed food on a tray through a slot in the door as if he were a monster in a cage. At this point, Bados said he could sense the presence of someone else whenever he received his meals. The child would sit up on his lonely bed in that cold, desolate room. In Bados' memory, it was a voice that reminded him of the time whenever he forgot the same voice that promised he would become immortal. The child then began to wonder about the monster's ring that was present on its head, along with a question that had lingered for so long. How long had he been here? Over time, the child began to feel a profound emptiness in that vast, cold room, being all alone day after day. Just as I began to grow weary of the loneliness, Bados heard the sound of footsteps. Startled, the child suddenly lifted its head and looked toward the main door with wide, curious eyes. Then the door creaked open. A man, his face obscured, stood in the doorway. The child simply stared at him motionless. The man commanded the child, "Come here." In that instant, Bados sensed something about him and his heart began to pound. He was stunned by the man's appearance. The child remained seated, observing with innocent curiosity. This irritated the man, who repeatedly yelled, startling the child, "Hurry up and get out here now." The child began to rise from the cold floor. It toddled towards the dark doorway, unaware of the path of revenge and mystery that lay beyond. Stepping past the threshold, the child gazed curiously at everything outside the room with wide, innocent eyes. It then approached a nearby broken mirror. Fascination and novelty replaced the child's initial curiosity. It cheerfully posed and played with its own reflection in the mirror with pure innocence. Then the child suddenly looked up, puzzled. It was standing in front of a door marked with the number 6. It had no idea what lay beyond it, and a child's innate curiosity to explore filled its mind. Suddenly, an adult's voice echoed from nearby, causing the child to turn instinctively. "This is a warning. Do not stop." The child continued on step by step down the dark path. A moment later, it began to run, then started skipping playfully like any other child its age. It was the first time I could run freely. In that dark prison, a child's pure light, a hint of its future capacity for regeneration, still shone brightly, Bados shared softly. Bados's heart pounded with excitement at the thought of the world beyond the door. The scene shifts to the child standing with many other children. After leaving that room, he realized he was living among others who were a monster just like him. The faces of those children were completely devoid of emotion, lacking the innocence of their age. And alongside them, Bados learned many things. Bados began his education with the other children, starting with writing and moving on to complex subjects like nomenclature. They learned about demons, hybrids, and humans, and so he mastered the fundamentals Bados emphasized. However, it was constantly drilled into them that Bados and the others could never defy the power of the hybrids and would ultimately die a fate that would fuel his future revenge. These complex declarations filled the mind of a child whose brain was not yet fully developed with endless questions. The instructor at the front continued speaking. The only way for a demon to become truly immortal and survive is through the power of the Lord. Time passed. Bados turned 8. He explained that like the other children there, upon reaching the age of 8, they would be transferred to a different location. That place was filled with many demons older than Bados. They ran and played, seeming much happier than the younger children, almost like a specialized hunter in training. And it seems that in his 12 years of life, a grim existence for any budding hunter, Bados's happiest memory was meeting a friend in that place. As Bados recounted his long path he had met Leah, a child his age, who cheerfully rushed up to him, unaware that the boy before her was a veritable monster with an immortal-like power of regeneration. "You have blue hair just like me. This is the first time I've seen anyone else with this color besides myself." Hearing this, Bados just mumbled in acknowledgement, not engaging with the girl Leah. Unconsciously, the two children looked off to the side as the entire group was led to another larger building. This made all the children incredibly excited. "Hurry up, everyone, it's time to go outside." Both Leah and Bados craned their necks to look at the scenery outside. Bados marveled at the beauty of the world beyond. While he was lost in the view, Leah rushed over and grabbed his arm, pulling him along to his surprise. "Come on this way," Leah said. The two children dragged each other towards the door, urged on by Leah's impatience. "Faster!" Nearby, a silent monster watched them, saying nothing. A moment later, the blue-skinned monster turned to another of its kind with a strange look in its eyes. "I'm starving." The other monster, seeing this, spoke up. "Don't ruin things. Go drink some blood and come back." Hearing that, the blue-skinned monster leaned against the wall and said, "That's what I was planning on doing. But why do we have to take care of these demons like this? Letting them play outside. They should be training to become a proper hunter." The older monster explained, "They say that without these things, their special regeneration slows, and they can't live long, failing to reach their immortal potential. Who knows, they might even seek death on their own or something similar." He was about to turn and leave, but he didn't forget to warn the blue-skinned monster. "This is what I've learned from direct experience, so do your job properly." At this, the blue-skinned monster asked with a confused expression, "Do you think I'm questioning you? I was just asking." Outside, warm sunlight flooded every corner. In a vast forest of golden leaves, Bados found Leah diligently digging at the base of a nearby tree. He curiously approached and asked, "What are you doing?" Seeing Bados's curiosity, Leah turned and gave a mysterious smile which only made him even more intrigued. Leah stood up, dusted off her hands and clothes, and held a book hidden behind her back. Then she turned to him and said as a reminder, "Everything you're about to see is a secret, understand?" Hearing this, Bados hesitantly agreed. "All right." Seeing his agreement, Leah presented the book to Bados with a look of extreme excitement. "Ta-da!" Bados recalled how Leah explained many things to him, showing him new concepts, including the one about God. At that moment, Bados stood still, captivated, as Leah rambled on, explaining the contents of the book. And there, for the first time, he was given a name he would one day use to exact his revenge. Elsewhere, a young Leah was stomping on the freshly dug earth as if trying to bury something. Leah spoke, "Sister Rose secretly gave me this book." The scene changes. A monster stood behind her. It smiled, placing its hands on her shoulders, and said, "Shall I tell you about the special reward you'll receive for being possessed?" It led Rose to a place where many other children were sitting cross-legged. The children chanted in unison, "We will be granted the circle of glory and be given a name by the Lord." Hearing this, the monster also spoke to Rose. "That's right, you all know it very well." After speaking, the monster took out a shackle. It flashed a smile and continued, "Then let's bestow this circle of glory in front of everyone." From somewhere, a voice echoed in agreement. "Agreed." Then the monster slowly and gently sat down beside Rose. It gently smiled as it fastened the shackle around her ankle. The monster said, "Do you have any last words for the children before you depart?" But Rose remained silent, not uttering a single word. As the shackle was fastened to her ankle, a dark energy began to envelop Rose. Suddenly she spoke, "I will ascend to a height no one has ever reached, becoming something nearly immortal." The dark energy continued to surround Rose's body as she spoke deliberately, "When I get there, if you ever see my face again." And finally that murky darkness crept up to Rose's head. She turned to the monster and said, "When the time comes, remember that I was here." Rose's gaze fixed on the monster, yet it was devoid of any emotion. She spoke slowly, "Take care." The last image of Rose was of her trying to say something, but her words were inaudible. And then the darkness gradually consumed her, beginning a dark regeneration that would reshape her spirit and body. The monster, seemingly satisfied, slowly led Rose away in front of all the remaining children sitting cross-legged below. Suddenly, Bados saw Leah crying, her shoulders trembling. Bados recounted that it was the first time he had ever felt jealous. He continued to watch Leah as two streams of tears flowed endlessly down her face. A desire to protect her welled up inside him, a vow to prevent the kind of loss that fuels a quest for revenge. He wanted to make her smile. The setting sun gradually enveloped the surroundings, casting a melancholic hue over the scene. Bados took gentle steps, approaching where Leah was sitting. Beside Leah was a small book. Leah spoke up. "Sister Jose said the most important thing for possession is faith in God." Leah's tears wouldn't stop. She cried so hard her shoulders shook. Emotionally, Leah continued, "I can't do anything. I'll be possessed and see Sister Rose again." Pausing for a moment, Leah said to Bados, "You should do it too." Bados, hearing this, didn't understand. He let out a confused sound as extreme pain enveloped Leah's body and mind. A child of only 8 years old experiencing such agonizing emotions for the first time. She knelt on the ground, tearfully pleading with Bados in a desperate voice, "You have to be possessed too, because I don't want to say goodbye again." Hearing this, Bados smiled innocently, then pointed to the black halo above his head and told her, "All right, if you do it, I'll do it." Suddenly, Leah held out her pinky finger to Bados and said, "Promise me." With tears welling in her eyes, she told him, "I saw it in a book. Promises are made by linking pinkies." Seeing this, Bados said cheerfully, "Okay, I promise." Then he also held out his pinky, about to link it with Leah's. Like this. But from the black halo, a black tendril emerged and wrapped tightly around Bados's pinky finger. Seeing this, he suddenly froze, staring at his finger in confusion. Seeing this, Leah rushed over with a worried expression, looking at Bados. That was how he awakened the first step on his path as a hunter at just 9 years old. And so the two children became as close as soulmates. Leah draped her arm around Bados's neck under the sunset in a forest of golden leaves. They played games together, looking very happy. At that moment, Bados thought they would probably die. As Leah and Bados were walking through the forest together, Leah suddenly spotted something. She approached, bent down, and said, "If we get caught, Sister Jose will be punished too. So you can't tell anyone, got it?" Hearing this, Bados smiled cheerfully and said, "Got it, Leah." Suddenly, Leah angrily spun around and shouted, startling Bados into clamping his hand over his mouth. "You can't just say my name out loud like that. Weren't you taught that we're not supposed to give names to others?" Bados asked upon hearing her. "Yeah, that's right." After hearing him, Leah's expression did a complete 180 as she flashed a bright smile. Leah ran over, grabbed Bados's hand, and started running, saying, "Let's go." Bados smiled back and replied, "Yeah." Just then, a brilliant light flooded the entire area. Leah and Bados joyfully ran and leaped across the grounds, heading toward a building in the distance. Bados admitted he had developed feelings for Leah, and a year went by in their seemingly immortal youth. Back in that same gloomy, dark classroom, the children were still sitting cross-legged on the floor, looking up at the instructor on the dais. So far, he had only been taught about the Lord and possession. Bados was just like the others, sitting there in silence. They always stressed that anyone not possessed by the age of 15 would be transferred elsewhere to start over. But for a successful hunter, we will receive a glorious ring and be named by the Lord. While sitting there, he unconsciously opened his eyes and looked at Leah with fascination. Although the daily routine of classes and sitting still, with his eyes closed, had become long and tedious, being with Leah still made Bados happy. And so Bados sat there lost in thought with a faint smile. He thought he didn't need the Lord or anything else as long as he could stay with Leah. He was so lost in this thought that he blurted out, "I don't need it." This caused the instructor to exclaim in confusion, "Huh?" The instructor then walked up to Bados. He asked, "Did the Lord speak to you?" Flustered Bados replied, "I'm sorry, I was just a bit distracted." "Please pay it no mind." The instructor turned back toward the dais and warned him, "If you don't want to be transferred elsewhere, you'd better focus. That place is no walk in the park." Bados complied, "Yes, I'm sorry." And with that, the instructor left the classroom, leaving the children sitting there dazed and confused. Just then, outside the door, a monster cheerfully said to Joss, "Let's head inside." After stepping inside, the monster stood before the children and announced, "Most of you here are likely already aware, but there may be a few seeing this for the first time. That's right, at the tender age of 11, after a year of struggle since the first possession, she has returned with a complete possession." As the monster spoke, Leah stared up from the floor and let out a gasp. "It's Rose." This made Bados think to himself, Rose. This new development sparked a desire for revenge in his heart, fueled by a power of regeneration he never knew he had.